Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Bronson, president of the Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners, abbreviated as TBCE and referred to simply as the board. I call this meeting to order. The date is October 31st, 2024, and the time is 9:01 a.m. The board secretary, Dr. Michael Henry, will call the roll.
Good morning, members. I'm going to start by calling roll. Please respond with here or present if you are here. Dr. Mark Bronson.
Here.
Joseph Holub. Josh Holub, sorry. Present, yeah. Dr. Mindy Neal.
Present.
Dr. Nicholas Bockham.
Present.
Dr. Matthew Mix.
Present.
Dr. Michael Henry is present. Dr. Sarah Abraham.
Present.
Brandon Allen. Not present. And Scott Wofford, D.C. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. So of our 9-member board, we have 8 members present today with 1 member absent. I affirm that a quorum is established. Honorable board members and Team TBCE, thank you for your ongoing service and for preparing your reports for this meeting. Guests and stakeholders, welcome. Our agenda includes a place for you to share your concerns or advice. Agenda item number 6 allows for public comments. I'll consider each of your requests individually and either invite you to speak then, or I might ask you to wait until we reach our agenda item corresponding to your concern. And as chairman of this meeting, I reserve the right to alter the order of the agenda. I do not anticipate doing so for this meeting. Agenda item number 2 calls for discussion and action to approve the minutes for the board meetings held on July 19th, 2024 and August 1st, 2024. Has any board member not received and reviewed these minutes, and does any board member require any discussion? I submitted a few suggestions to correct typos and to clarify the source of a public comment during the August 1st meeting, but nothing substantive. Nikel and Joe, do you know if those suggestions for edits came through? Because I did it on the PDF.
Yeah, I saw them on the Google Drive.
Okay. So I'll
To move that we accept those changes and accept the meeting minutes.
Okay, your microphone, please.
Sorry, I'd like to move that we accept the minutes with the proposed changes.
Motion's been made by Dr. Henry, seconded by Dr. Wofford to my left, was the first one that I heard. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item number 3 is the President's report. Is my microphone coming through okay the way I'm sitting? So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a very busy quarter for your board president. I'll condense my report where possible, but you'll appreciate some of the details of these meetings that I've attended, and especially some advice I've received in recent leadership training courses. So if you have any questions about any of these items, feel free to interrupt me to ask the question. As long as we don't start any tangent discussions, I just want you to understand what I'm reporting to you. Events since the last board meeting, which was on May 23rd, 2024, on August 3rd, hang on a second. So, since the last board meeting on August 1st, 2024, on August the 3rd, 2 days later, on the Saturday, several of us, including board member Joshua Holub, Jennifer and her husband, my wife Martha and I attended the investiture of Dr. Sandra Hughes as president of Texas Chiropractic College in Pasadena. It was a formal ceremony with all of the regalia and speeches from dignitaries and some of her colleagues in school administration. Nice event. I'm so glad that we got to go. On August the 5th through the 11th, pilot Part 4 National Board Test grading took place. As chief examiner, I was asked to nominate 3 DCs to participate. I included myself so that I could have a firsthand experience with the new format and to offer them feedback from a regulatory perspective. On September 22nd through the 26th, I attended my first week of the Governor's Executive Development Program. It's called GEDP 42, which means the 42nd class of this program that the governor created back then, and then a subsequent governor assigned the administration of the course to the University of Texas at Austin and created the Governor's Center for Management Development through the LBJ School of Public Affairs at UT Austin. The faculty includes university professors and leadership and legislative consultants. I'm just going to read the topics so you'll appreciate what I attended, and if any of these strike a chord with you on a hot topic that you want to know more about, then I'll share that with you later. Emotional intelligence, artificial intelligence in the public sector, the engaging leader, and then we had an applied learning project, an ethics lecture, economic development initiatives, and then the governor actually gave us a charge with 2 items. So he charged our cohort with coming up with a solution collectively and then reporting back to him in December. Then October 21 to 24, I attended the second week of this program, which was in Dallas this time. And one of the items was, as you know, a thing called the 360 Leadership Profile. And so we had a debriefing on it at this meeting. That was the survey that I sent to you and asked you to complete for me. Those of you that did it, thank you so much. That was important for me to get a perspective of my leadership effectiveness and my communication skills. And so without you completing that, then I wouldn't have had the statistics and to have a meaningful feedback. Hopefully, now I did get some pretty nice remarks from the organizer of the event, but I still hope to use this information to enhance my communication skills and leadership effectiveness. One of the important lessons that I learned during a course on legislative communications by David Bashir, a consultant in PR and politics, taught me that agencies can and should talk to legislators to provide information and insights on how certain proposed bills might affect the agency and the public, and how current statute might need an update. It's not the same as lobbying, which we do not do. We simply inform within our mission. And when we do that, we always need to maintain a unified voice, preferably mine or Dr. Bush's. Thank you. Future events. This coming November 8th through 10th, National Board Part 4 Administration at Parker University in Dallas. I will serve as Chief Examiner under a contract not associated with my position on this board, while Dr. Mix will represent our board, joining a team of about 40 DC examiners who will be grading the clinical skills of other DCs or chiropractic students as one of the requirements for licensure. Then on December 9 through 12, I will attend the third week of GEDP 42. This one will be in Galveston, and we will submit our response to the governor, and then I'll actually graduate from this course. On February 7th will be the next board meeting here in the Bush Building at 9 a.m. Please make a note, that's a Friday. We couldn't get it for Thursday. On May 1 through 4, 2025 will be the FCLB annual conference in St. Louis, Missouri. We also have already scheduled May 22nd, 2025, which would be the following board meeting here in the Bush Building. That is a Thursday. And then the meeting after that will be August 21st, 2025, here in this building. May was 22. August 21st. And then Dr. Bush, I hope that we can consider October 30th, a year from yesterday, as the, so if, and I think that the sign up, Lisa? Thank you, Lisa Agarwal. You are Johnny on the spot. I sure appreciate you doing that. So there you go, board members. Next board meeting a year from now, from yesterday, October 30th. To be determined sometime in 2025, hopefully that we don't wait until 2026. I'd like for a couple of us at least to speak to Texas Chiropractic College students in an assembly. I spoke with the administration staff there, a couple of them, when we were there for the investiture event, and we haven't followed up or solidified a date. I would hope to consider that to be an annual event, preferably in September, though, not January, February, because the legislature's in session and we're quite busy every other year. And then under new issues, just that concern me personally and that have made the rounds in conversation many times, is practicing chiropractic without a license still being a misdemeanor. We all seem to agree that the public would be served better if it were a felony. I'd like to hear from agency staff and board members and anybody in the public too, to refresh my memory and to solidify why that's an important thing. And that's not during this meeting right now, but anytime. That concludes the President's report, and that's going to bring us to agenda item number 4, which calls for board committee reports. So committee chairs, when I call on you, please acknowledge your committee members and summarize your activities as you wish. First up, Dr. Michael Henry, Chair of the Rules Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Bronson. The Rules Committee has had, we've been busy. There have been several discussions about some upcoming rules, and we've kind of laid out a matrix as to how we want to approach those. Today, we've got 4 rules to consider. 2 are going to be ready for proposal, and 2 are really more discussion items we wanted to bring to the board to get some input on some early drafts that we're working on. And yeah, this should be interesting. I'll go into more detail on those as we go, and our General Counsel, Joseph McLaughlin, sorry, Joe, will be giving you more details as well. Thank you. Oh, and I'd also like to recognize our members, Dr. Nick Bockham and Mr. Brandon Allen, for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Henry? Next up, Dr. Nicholas Bockham, Chair of Enforcement Committee. Nick?
Thank you, Dr. Bronson. Enforcement Committee met October 29th, so it was this Tuesday, and we reviewed...
Dr. Bockham, is your microphone on?
It is. Can y'all...
Okay, great.
Is it working?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Enforcement met on October 29th, this last 2 days ago on Tuesday, and we reviewed 25 cases with the enforcement division. This is Dr. Neal, Mr. Hollab, and myself. And yeah, enforcement. I have to commend the enforcement division. The entire time that I've been on the board, 8 years, this is by far the best and smoothest we've ever had for enforcement. I mean, it's really rocking and rolling. I mean, we're up to date on everything and closing cases quickly. I'll jump on the soapbox again as well about the felony versus misdemeanor, because it really hurts us, and we're seeing a significant uptick in unlicensed folks practicing chiropractic right now. So I think that's going to be a priority. If anybody has any recommendations on how we can move that along, that'd be great. But and then also Dr. Kerbin has done a phenomenal job with her case review for us before the meetings, and it's really helped. So thank you for that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Dr. Baucom. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Baucom? Next up is Dr. Scott Wofford as chair of the Education Standards Committee.
So our committee is made up of Dr. Minnie Deal and Dr. Sarah Abraham, and we have not been busy. We've only had one application that we approved because we're pretty blessed, because Jennifer is amazing and does all the hard work for us. And so we had one that we approved, and that's it since the last meeting. So it's been that easy. Well, it's that easy because of her, Jennifer. Thank you.
Since we're on that topic, did you have anything to add, Jennifer? No. Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Wofford. Next up, Dr. Sarah Abraham as chair of the Licensing Committee. Dr. Abraham?
Thank you, Dr. Bronson. The licensing committee did not meet or had any special meetings. Sarah Matthews must be doing a great job, and I would like to recognize the board members, Dr. Mindy Neal and Joshua Hollab. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham. Any questions, board members? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item number 5, which calls for reports from our executive director and agency staff. And it brings me great pleasure to introduce to you our newest executive director, Dr. Walton, goes by Boyd Bush, B-U-S-H, same as the building here.
I just wish that it would be part of my family, and of course, I don't know if I'd rather have that branch of the bush or the bush beer side, but whatever it takes. So it's been a pleasure coming on board. I'm excited about the good work of the board. I've been involved with the political arena for a number of years now, and I'm excited to step in this role. The staff has been phenomenal in taking care of getting me acclimated to what's taking place. The issues by the board members I've spoken with, I'm learning more and more as we go along, and I'm excited about the legislative session coming forward in the next few months as we gear up for that. We've got a lot of exciting things taking place. A couple of things on my report I want to share that are vitally important to the board and the operations of the agency. And in the handouts and in the board materials, I've got a little overview there. We're working with DIR, Texas Department of Information Resources, is the agency that takes care of the majority of the IT projects within the state government of Texas. Currently, we work more closely with the Health Professions Council that takes care of our IT needs. There's been a move to shift everything over to DIR. I've got tons more detail than I'll give here if you've got any more questions about it. But the key thing I want you to be aware of is, notice the chart I have on the handouts. In here, this is the cost it's going to take to get our equipment from where we are now to where it's under DIR's umbrella. And if you'll look there, I'll bottom line at $283,000 over the next 4 years to make that transition. And then an ongoing cost of around $69,000 to keep that going from that point forward. That's unless changes are made and so forth. So the thing is, they've come in already, they've analyzed our system, they've outlined what we need to take care of, and DIR is in the process of making those changes. Once those changes are made, then the transition needs to be made to move them over. However, we don't have the funding to do this. So we are working with DIR, Health Professions Council, and the Legislative Budget Board to work out a way that if this is going to happen, that we will get the funding that we need. One of the suggestions that LBB has suggested is that we increase fees for our licensees. I've expressed that would be something that would be the last item that we'd want to approach to try to find better ways to do it, because there's appropriations out there that we should be able to get a hold of that'll take care of this. And so that chart kind of breaks down year to year. You'll notice in fiscal year 27, that's the $94,000 price tag. That's when they're actually physically going to move the equipment into their data warehouse center. So it'll be taken out of this building and moved to an entirely different building. And then they'll stand it up there, and that way it'll be all conglomerated with everything else they take care of. Now, the nice thing about this is it will give us better security. We won't have the attacks that we've had. We won't lose information like we've lost in the past. And so it should stand things up to make it a stronger process. Now, there is the option that if we don't get the funding, we stay where we are. But HPC has said that they will do whatever they can to make sure we still carry that security, put it in place, make sure everything's more secure than what was previously. So that's a key thing that I'm working on right now, is working through the logistics of that, trying to secure the funding so we can take care of all of the licensee information and all the things we have on our data network as far as that goes.
Do we,
Quite-
pro-
go
yeah,
ahead.
do we produce enough of a surplus that we send back to the state for us to be able to keep enough of that to cover this expense?
Yes, the state takes close to half. I don't have the exact figure in front of me. They, of the licensees, the money that we collect, approximately, not quite half of it goes back to the state. The only control we have over that is whatever the state says we have control over.
So is that something we can request in order to cover
Yes.
this kind of exceptional
Oh,
items?
absolutely. And that's why I've been in conversation with the LBB,
Right.
so we can start that conversation.
The fee increases are definitely not.
They're not the best
Necessary.
option. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we collect enough money to cover it, but the problem is the state then takes the portion we give to them and use it for other purposes in what's going on. Which a portion of it they need to just run state business. We understand that, but we should have access to a little bit more to cover this.
And I'm not sure if you specifically mentioned it, and I did not, but you and I went and testified to the
Yes.
LBB, what was that, maybe 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was the first part of October. Yes.
Yeah. So we've already taken the first step to ask for these appropriations, and then the next step will be in January, I believe, when Dr. Bush and I will both go to speak to the Senate Finance Committee and the House Appropriations Committee.
Exactly. And in that process, we will also have an opportunity, another window to put in another exceptional request, submit another exceptional item. So that's once the LBB gets this figured out, and the governor's office for that matter, then we'll have a better footing of what we have to approach at that point. So there are still steps that will be in process that will allow us to get to where we need to be. So it's something I'm monitoring very closely. And sometime over coffee or drinks, I'll tell you some of the stories of the shenanigans I've pulled to get some attention, and it's worked.
Thank you.
So, other questions about DIR? I'm going to go into LAR next, but any other questions you might have? All right. Now, if you look in your board materials, we have the legislative appropriation request actually there. Let me pull that up so I have it. Wrong folder. I apologize. Learning my way around my own computer here. There it is. On the LAR, I have a couple of things I've highlighted that I want to make sure and point out as we go through. As Dr. Bronson this is the legislative appropriation request that we submitted. And a couple of the key things I want to point out. If you will scroll down to where you're on page, there it is. I'm sorry, glasses too. 2B, or not to be. This breaks down the full legislative appropriation request that we've made. And notice there at the top of the table there, it says requested 2026, requested 2027. We have requested $1,187,189 for our next budget. The one we are currently working under at 2025 is $1,187,490. Let me start that over. $1,187,498 is what we're currently working under. So we're actually requesting just a little bit less than our current budget. But our current budget also includes the 5% raises that the staff got this year as well. So that's that's what we are requesting. The second thing I want to are the questions about that amount. They've broken down the computations and what it's going to take versus the increase in the number of licensees, and all of those kind of things have been taken into consideration. If you will scroll on down then to page 2C, again, that gives you a breaking down of salaries and fees and all of those kind of things that are involved with the legislative appropriation request. This is mainly for your information, just to give you an overview of what we've got. The next highlighted section will be on 2E. 2E actually has the full amount of our exceptional item. We've set an exceptional item to increase the salaries of the staff. One of the things I've done in some of the research that I've conducted is we actually pay our staff less than other states, especially states of the same size, but we even pay less than Oklahoma does. And for you UT fans, that's going to be a big slap in the face. And so as a result, I feel like this staff, and I presented this, and there's a letter in there, and I'll explain that in a moment as well. If you look at what my staff has to do, we have to wear several hats within each one of the job titles. They are not able just to focus on one branch of finance or one branch of licensing. They have to cross train and do other portions of it. We spread out the work over everybody. So in essence, they have to, in actuality, they have to work harder than other agencies that have specialists in certain areas. And so as a result, my staff works harder than a bigger agency that makes more money. And so I want to make sure that my staff's taken care of so that we take care of the profession of chiropractic, so that we make sure everything's done, regulations are taken care of, and people of Texas are safe. And the next document that I've included as well is the letter that Dr. Bronson and I presented to the budget hearing that we went to kind of explain some of these things as well, and so to give a justification and a rationale for that. Questions on that part? So basically, it is a biennium request of $101,082, which on the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money. If you'll scroll down then again to page 2F, it rolls then that exceptional item into our legislative appropriation request for a total of $1,237,730 for our full request if our exceptional items are funded. And I believe that's the key ones that I wanted to point out. Are there questions on the LAR or the way we approached it or did anything along that lines? No? All right. Next item that I have up in your folders basically is the LAR support item letter. This goes through and shows basically the rationale that we have put together in a summarized one-pager. After working in the legislature, I learned real quick, if it's longer than one page, they're not going to look at it. And so we've put together this one-pager to show the reason why and the justification for why we're asking for more money for our staff members. And you can peruse that. And like I said, Oklahoma pays. Now, in the letter, I based it on the executive director's salary because the executive director's salary sets the standard for the rest of the agency. And so if the executive director makes, for instance, Oregon, which is a smaller state, a lot less, fewer chiropractors, they've only got 1,672 chiropractors, their executive director makes $108,000 a year. California, $159,000. Washington State, $156,000. Florida, $123,000. Oklahoma, $109,000. And us in Texas, my salary is $108,720. And so, in doing that, each one of these items shows why, with us sitting at 720, Florida only has 60,000 plus. Washington State, 2,500 licensees. So we've got a bigger workload, but yet my staff's not getting paid as much as other states. And again, the glowing one that I like to throw out there is Oklahoma. So, questions along the LAR or the cover letter then at that point? All right. And back to this, make sure I'm covering everything here. We are, like Dr. Bachman said, my enforcement committee is doing phenomenal work. We sat down, Joe and I and Chris sat down. We looked at the cases, where they are, what needs to be done, what it's going to take to get them closed out. We worked out a plan together. Granted, I sat on the side watching as they were discussing what we really needed to adjust. And I said, we've got to do something to move these forward, to get them off high center. And so they've been working very diligently. Tommy's been helping with getting letters together so we can get things taken care of. So they have made phenomenal progress over the last couple of months. And so I'm excited that at the work that they are doing. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. They're going to be doing that presentation. But I want to commend them for the work that they were putting in to identify what we needed to do. We've made a plan together, and that plan is being utilized to move forward. And I appreciate them for stepping up and taking care of that. So, and in saying that, I want to warn you, our days to closure are going to increase because we got some ones that have been on the books for a long time. And naturally, when you have 200, 300, 400 days to closure on one case, that's going to skew the good work that they've been doing. So bear that in mind when you see the performance measures. But I guarantee you, once we get past those, the numbers are going to be flying out of here like you wouldn't believe. So, in fact, these guys work better together than some of the other enforcement committees enforcement teams that I've worked with before. So I appreciate their hard work and their dedication on getting it done.
Are those mainly just cases that are going to SOA?
Joe?
For the most part, yeah. So,
but we now have a pathway to get closure on those. We have the items in place to get it taken care of. Enforcement committee has signed off on the efforts of what's taking place, and so we'll be able to move quickly then at that point, which I'm excited about. Then my final item is very simple. We went, Dr. Bronson and I got to go to North Carolina about, a week or two before the big hurricane hit and washed away. We got to go up to Chimney Rock, and I didn't know about Chimney Rock. Dr. Bronson shared that with me. And we went hiking. Well, they went hiking. I took the elevator. So, I have a little bit of a heart condition I have to worry about. But anyway, so we got to see all this beautiful scenery. The town, we had some great ice cream, heard some live music. We just were excited about it. And then not 1 or 2 weeks later, the whole town was washed away. So it's sad. The group of folks are definitely in our prayers. My church specifically has sent out rescue crews and donations and all of that. And I know the whole, everybody around here is really reaching out to them because it's a devastation. But I got to go to the FCLB conference, met a lot of really good executive directors. That's how I was able to gather some of the information I have, and I'm working with them to find out how they're doing things. In fact, it was interesting in some of the sub-meetings we had, they were asking questions about what we do because we are a leader in the chiropractic field. And so I'm excited to work with the different education institutions, our board, the chiropractors of the state to really, we could educate the rest of the country very quickly and easily with what we're doing because we're making good progress and step forward. And so got to enjoy that. I appreciate Dr. Bronson allowing me to be a part of that. I met some good folks, learned a lot of great things, and we'll probably have a topic today that he and I were talking about that came out of that as well. So, again, I just want to commend my staff. Oh, and one more thing, I want to chime in just very shortly. The change to a felony for non-licensure practice of chiropractic, I've already been doing some research, found out what it's going to take to get that switched, and I'm in the process of working with lobbying groups to work out the details for an approach so that we can address it this legislative session. So it's something that's a priority on my list to get taken care of. Where we will get with it, I don't know yet. I'm still working on the landscape. As Dr. Bronson said, we can't lobby, but once the legislators find out the need, they can call any of us and ask us, and we can tell them what our thoughts are, the process that we go through, and all of these kind of things. Mm-hmm. We just can't lobby on that effort. So that's why I want to work through some groups and see what we can do to get this taken care of, because I think it's very important. We need to protect the people of Texas by protecting you guys' licensures, and that's very important to me, highly important. Are there any other questions for me in my short tenure here? Well, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
We certainly appreciate you accepting this job and the amazing service you've done so far. Thank you. And so customarily, I can either allow you to call on your Director of Operations, Ms. Jennifer Herzenberg, or I can do it.
Either way,
I'll just follow through if you don't care.
go right ahead. Help yourself,
Okay,
Dr.
so
Bronson.
our Director of Operations, Mrs. Jennifer Herzenberg, you have the floor, ma'am.
All right. Good morning, board members. Happy Halloween. I have attached a financial report for the first quarter of FY25. There's not a lot going on since we're only a couple of months into the new fiscal year. But you can see that we are on track with our expenditures and our revenues, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Ms. Herzenberg. Let's move on to now our Director of Licensing, Ms. Sarah Matthews.
Good morning, members. I don't have much to report for the licensing. We're just continuing our day-to-day functions. Jared and I did attend Parker University Homecoming in Dallas, October 4th through the 5th. While we were there, we had the opportunity to speak to many licensees, not only from Texas, but from other states as well, duly licensed as well. We did have a lot of students come and speak to us, ranging from Tri 1 to almost graduating. So we had a lot of visitors this time, so it was a good thing we were there. We were able to answer a lot of questions. Other than that, the licensing dashboard is attached to your meeting materials. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Let's hear from our Director of Enforcement, Mr. Chris Walling.
Thank you, board members. Thank you for being here today. And I just want to say thank you for the praise you guys given us, but it's a whole team. Jennifer, Sarah, Joe, everybody, Tommy, Jared, they all play a big part in that and helping us out and getting things done. So it's a huge team, and I praise that everybody. So with what we've done since the last quarter we met, we've had an intake of 52 cases. Administratively, we closed out 13 of those cases, usually because of either no jurisdiction, withdrawal of the complaint, or insufficient evidence, or there's no violation of, it was just somebody angry. We referred 3 cases to law enforcement. You may have heard about some of those cases. They've been kind of high profile lately in the Denton area. But we've been on top of those. Law enforcement is on top of those, and they're working with us. We've issued 4 cease and desist orders due to non-licensees out there. We've also had 2 emergency suspensions that we issued because of the actions that the person took are in danger to the public. This last EC, we presented 25 cases. We recommended 5 of those cases not be a violation. And then the violations that we recommended were 20 that the EC took on. We also, Dr. Kerbin worked with us on standard of care review. She reviewed over 7 of those cases. Maybe I'm not quite sure, but it may be a little bit more than that. She does a lot of work for us. Right now, our top violations, have you noticed, usually when we reported, advertising and patient records are always the top. Today, it's practicing without a license. We're seeing a huge uptick and a big increase in that. And I'd like to comment on that. I know we've been talking, and I appreciate Dr. Bush to taking on this, what he's doing right now for us. But as I speak to the people out in the public, chiropractors, to our board, what we're seeing is an injustice to the chiropractic profession, and I've seen some pretty bad stuff so far. We've had one individual who had up 2 practices already, and at no license. He was kicked out of a state, several states. Had a huge criminal record, and he just blatantly came here into Texas and set up 2 shops. He had actually tried to apply, never finished it out. But he had 2 locations out there in the Houston area and had patients and working for cash and had a whole setup, and we shut him down. Chris Beach here did an amazing case recently. We went out, he went undercover. And through that process, he went to a chiropractor, which is not a licensed chiropractor. He was from Mexico, but he had already set up shop here. And he basically had an in-home pharmacy, a chiropractic practice. He offered Chris here to be injected with Tramadol. And what was it, ketamine? Ketamine. So, I mean, it's getting, and especially with the alpha biotics out there, we're seeing more and more of that. We just actually had some communication with TWC and their higher education department that they're actually going to start looking into that school there in Dallas that teaches and gives out certifications to do the crane adjustment that they call brain balancing, which is, they say it's not an adjustment, it's a technique of brain balancing. But you're dealing with somebody's neck, you're twisting, popping, and you could cause serious damage, which there is case history already through other states where people have been indicted, been sued in lawsuits for the dissection of arteries, as well as injuries and stuff like that. But to be a Class A misdemeanor, I think it's a total insult to the profession of chiropractic. And I really, really push that people, chiropractors out there, people out there, speak up and protect your practice, and let's get it to a third-degree felony. Every other health profession out there is a third-degree felony. The only one that's not is a massage therapist, and it's a Class B. And we're just one up. Oh, a vet is a Class A. But you have nurses, you have dentists, you have doctors. They're all third-degree felonies. I have why we're at a Class A, but I can tell you, as much hours Chris put into that case, working with law enforcement, the money we spent, the travel, the rooms, the meals, working undercover for a Class A, the police department was like, yeah, we'll help you out, but we'll call you when we're done. That's all we ever get. We put our cases up to them. Yeah, we'll look at it, which I think Boyd basically said earlier today that I'll call you later, which means you ain't going to hear from me. But yeah, when it comes to a third-degree felony, Chris, and Amy here all been in law enforcement profession, and I'll tell you, when you have a good felony, your DA perks up, your officers perk up. It's worth the time, worth the efforts, and they'll get it done. And I think in order to protect this profession and keep these individuals out, Texas needs to bump this up to a third-degree felony and get it done. The other thing I'd like to ask the board of is to consider this. We're also having a lot of issues with non-DC owners of chiropractic clinics. We've seen several cases where I can tell you egregious one right now that we've worked on is we have a personal injury attorney who owns a chiropractic clinic but has no DC there. What they do is they hire staff basically to give out hot and cold packs. They give out TENS units. They give out some kind of massage therapy. But you can see they bill $12,000, $13,000, $15,000, and they feed on these individuals who are in car accidents. And that's all they do. They have them come 2-3 times a week, as much as they can, for several months until the person either doesn't quit showing up or they get tired of showing up. But they're billing all that, and you'll look at the billing, and there's no adjustments. But they have a doctor's signature, and the doctor, if we have this in El Paso, he may be living in Dallas. He's not there. But we have to go after the doctor. But we don't have no say-so over these chiropractic clinics that have non-DC owners. And I think that's a huge problem. And I think there's something, I think last time we discussed in the board was we can administratively, I guess this board put something into administration code where we may have, I'm not sure, I may be misspeaking, Joe, but if you can correct me on that, but where we can do something where we might be able to have some kind of oversight on non-DCs in clinics. That's my report. So if you have any questions for me and like to shoot something at me, please do.
I just want to piggyback off of it where he was talking about the licensure thing or the facility registration, whatever. I know we went away from that in the past. At the last time that I was at Part 4, I got to speak with a board member from Arizona, and they had the same issue. And so the way that they got around it, and I think we talked about this at one of the meetings, The way that they got around it was they made the business entity just register, so you didn't have to have like a specific facility registration that was tied to a brick and mortar location, but the you know, the LLC, the PLLC, whatever, had to be in. This is in Arizona, which is a relatively large state as far as chiropractic goes, but they would make the business entity register with the state so that it could be tracked, and if there was something that went down, like the case that is the one that we just had in El Paso, was egregious. I mean, it was the DC wasn't even alive, and it was going on. But it would be a way, if we track the business entities, it could be a way that we could, you know, levy some penalties on the owners. Just a thought.
And I'd like to say, I don't want to cause, I mean, our Sarah and Jennifer are just, they do a lot of work. And I know if we do a registration, that just puts burden on them. And I hate to do that. But yeah, I do believe we need to have something in that fact, even if it's a no fee, but you can't operate unless you have that license. And you have a doctor who's going to either take responsibility or be a part of that clinic to be. And I know that affects, we got places out there like Arasti and the Joint that could affect, you know, non-DC owners. But I think if you have a chief doctor or somebody who steps up, they're the ones who take responsibility.
Can we consider our rules 78.3E and 79.5A as they relate to Occupations Code 201.5025A5, which describes who we regulate, by either changing the terms there, which indicate chiropractor and licensee, to person, or perhaps following the word licensee, add or other person. This will be consistent with our 2017 sunset hearing, where Chairman Gonzalez said that we don't register facility owners, but we can still regulate them. So person being a business entity by definition. That would be a question for Joe. And
So 78.3 subsection E, so change a licensee may not allow an individual to a person may not allow an individual.
either that or to say a licensee or other person. Instead
Right.
of striking anything, add or other person.
And then the statutory provision you referenced was 201.5025. Was that A5?
Yes, sir.
We can definitely look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that would give you the ability to call any individual or entity in front of the board for violations?
In 201.5025, the introductory language says a chiropractor or an applicant for a license
Yeah.
commits a prohibited practice. But I think that there is other language in 201 that we might be able to loop in and use that as authority instead. I'll need to explore it further.
Yeah, 'cause,
But
I mean, that gives us ability to revoke certificates or fine.
right, if we can find some language in statute that, you know, we have a reasonable argument that it gives you authority over facilities owners, then yeah, changing the rules to say person or whatever language we want to use, that part we have total control over. So really, I just need to explore Chapter 201 a little bit more. So,
Yeah,
but
thank
Dr. Bronson, I think you gave me some proposed language on that, so I have that saved in the drive. So that.
Yes, thank you. And if you have access to a recording of what Sunset told me in 2017.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, this takes us to agenda item number 6, which is reserved for public comments. The board will now entertain general comments from the public on matters not listed elsewhere in this agenda. Your comments are important to us, so please share your concerns openly. Understanding that a 3-minute presentation is customary, As I mentioned earlier, if your comment corresponds to an item on our agenda, we would prefer to hear your concerns during our discussion on that topic. I've received 2 registration forms, one from Michelle Quattlebaum, who would like to speak on rules changes. Michelle, are those rules changes on the agenda? Yes. Okay, so please get my attention then. Thank you. And then Steve Tullius is here for representing the Chiropractic Society of Texas on behalf of Scott Kelly. Wants to speak on agenda items 14 and 17, which when we get to those, again, please get my attention. Also wants to speak to comment on NBCE Part 4. And I think that we'd like to hear from you about your concern of NBCE Part 4 now, and then you can also come up on items 14 and 17. Is your microphone on, Doctor?
There we go. Thank you. As you mentioned, I'm presenting on behalf of the Chiropractic Society of Texas. The CST has concerns regarding the NBCE plans to centralize Part 4 testing and what that does to the Texas residents in chiropractic colleges currently, as well as students throughout the nation, in terms of causing them to have increased financial and logistical challenges. It's especially concerning because both the medical and osteopathic professions have shifted away from these high-stake practical exams in favor of program-based competency assessments that involve continuous evaluations throughout their education. These ongoing assessments align more closely with real-world practice and reduce these unnecessary financial and logistical burdens on students while still upholding the rigorous standards that this body and others need to uphold. What is especially concerning is that the NBCE has refused to release data to several educational institutions in our profession and other stakeholders who have requested outcomes data on Part 4, which would allow stakeholders and bodies such as the TBC to assess the exam's assurance in promoting public safety and competency. Because of that, we respectfully ask that the TBCE request from the NBC that they halt plans to centralize Part 4 until that data on public safety and competency has been made accessible for the TBC review, to ultimately and to consider ultimately moving away from these single high-stake exams and follow the trends in healthcare to transition to these program-based ongoing assessments, which would allow for more holistic and continuous evaluations of competencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tullius. Next on the agenda is agenda item number 7, involves requests to sit for the Texas jurisprudence examination pursuant to Texas Occupations Code 201.304A2. And in a moment, I'll call upon our Director of Licensing, Sarah Matthews. Is that what you're expecting?
Yes, sir. We also have a criminal history evaluation to review as well.
Okay. So in a moment, I'll ask you to introduce each request individually, and then board members, following any discussion, I'll entertain a motion as indicated and recognize the one that I hear first. Sarah?
Thank you, Dr. Bronson. Agenda item 7A is a consideration request for applicant Fred Aguayo to sit the Texas jurisprudence exam. Mr. Aguayo seeks chiropractic licensure in the state of Texas. Applicant is requesting approval to take the Texas jurisprudence exam and to have his Texas license reinstated. Applicant previously held Texas chiropractic license number 7820 from February 5th of 1998 to November 9th, 2023. When the license was revoked due to a conviction. Mr. Aguayo has 1 disciplinary action on file with the Texas Board. Applicant has a total of 7 arrests and at least 3 convictions or deferred sentences. Applicant is here as well as representation.
Give me just a moment. Sure, just a minute. No, I'm just reading it. Mr. Aguayo, I'm inviting you to speak on your own behalf, or if you have a representative to speak on your behalf, please come to the table in front of us and make sure the microphone is on.
Good morning, board members. My name is Dr. David Syme. I have been a licensed chiropractor in Texas since 1993, and I actually served on the board from 1998 to 2004. Our facilities weren't this nice. I'm not representing Fred. He dealt with some personal demons, and he was an alcoholic. And he hasn't had a drink in 2 years, so I can vouch for that. I was aware when I was a member of the board that as a board member, our duty was to protect the citizens of Texas, and when they're looking for chiropractic and chiropractic treatment as patients. I know also that as chiropractors, professionally and publicly, that we need to protect our image in the public and amongst ourselves. That said, I have known Fred for 35 years personally and for over 25 years professionally, okay, as a peer chiropractor. I'm here to support Fred and let you know that he has done everything that the court had required him to do before he was actually sentenced, and he is a wonderful, caring person. He's an amazing dad and amazing uncle. He's also an exceptional healthcare provider, and he's really a great chiropractor. Many of his staff has been with him for over 15 years. I think that's a good sign. They adore him. He takes care of his staff. He'll do things like take them to a water park and allow them to bring their whole family, and he covers everything. He's a very loving man. I also have been to his clinic countless times, and I see how his staff adores him and loves him. I also see how the patients love him, and I hear from the patients how they love him. He always greets them with a handshake and a huge smile. He's very genuine in how he cares about his patients on a personal level also. And I've seen it for over 25 years. He's also very respected in the community. He's had his issues outside of the office, but within the chiropractic profession, I feel like he knows everyone in town, all the chiropractors, and they all know him, and they're all happy to see him whenever they see him. He's also well known throughout the community, and he even recently was named the best chiropractor of El Paso. So his work in the community includes a large base of veterans that are under his care through the VA program and endeavors. He also provides care for many of the military personnel at Fort Bliss in El Paso. He is and always has been He's always been an exceptional doctor. He has an incredible knowledge of the human body and how to care for it. And I would, in the past, have Fred cover for me to take care of my patients, and I would in the future. I trust him explicitly and completely with certainty and confidence. My hope is that you would choose to have him reinstated so that he can continue providing the excellent care he provides for the people in El Paso. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Syme. Nice to meet you. Hello. Good morning. Tell us who you are and who you represent. And now,
oh, there we go. My name is Nancy Aguayo, and I am Fred's wife. We have been married for 20 years, and we have 2 children. I would like to speak on his character because I think I'm one of the people that knows him best. As a husband, he is a very dedicated husband. He has taught me so much. We have been through rough times, but through it all, we have stayed together because he's a wonderful man with a great heart. He recently moved his mom to a new home that he purchased for her because she was no longer able to walk. With our children, he has instilled a love for the medical and health field. One of them is actually here at UT as a pre-med student. Both of our children are 4.0 students, and he is the type of father that studies with them continuously, pushes them to be the best that they can be. And to this day, they have their hearts set on following his path. We have about 25 employees who have been with us for numerous years. He is a great doctor who has helped many people throughout his career. And there have been times where patients couldn't afford to pay for the treatment. And he would take them anyways because his passion, his love for helping people is so strong. I have seen personally how he has healed people that couldn't walk or were in so much pain. He is that type of person that just wants to help people. He's not in this profession for financial reasons, but more for the love of the patients and what he can do. He truly has a gift. Recently, we received an award, which we have received for 5 consecutive years as being one of the best clinics in El Paso. And I think that is due mainly to the service that we provide and that we go above and beyond any clinic and helping our patients heal. I would ask you to please consider reinstating him because he is a wonderful person. Thank you.
thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to sit in front of you.
Can you tell us who you are?
Yes, I'm Fred Aguayo.
Thank you.
Right now, not Dr. Fred Aguayo, but Fred Aguayo. So I've been in practice since 1998. I have a passion for chiropractic. You know, right now I have some DCs that are covering, but I love what I do. I've treated celebrities. I've treated athletes. I like to educate myself. I believe I'm a good practitioner. I'm very passionate about chiropractic. I support it. I do so much that, it's my identity, I love interacting with the patients. I love seeing the results, because like my wife and my brother-in-law said, I want to get them better. And, like right now it's been hard because I see the patients come in and, I know I can help them. I've been practicing for quite a while. And on another note, to go aside from that, I've been doing counseling. I do counseling twice a month. Been doing it for the last 3 years. I actually haven't had a drink in 3 years. And, I go to AA. I do counseling, and I'll continue doing counseling. It's made me a better person, both at home and, we're all fighting certain things. I believe that what I've gone through has made me more appreciative, more grateful, because you don't take things for granted, It makes me more aware of what's going on. So I'd like you to consider me. I believe I'm a good asset, and because of my passion and love for chiropractic. So thank you.
Before you get up, board members, do you have any questions?
So, sir, are you familiar with the statutes and rules? Have you ever gone over the rules to be a licensed DC in Texas?
Yes, sir.
Because if you go to your website right now, it has you listed as Dr. Fred Aguayo, DC, as an active license on your website, and that's violating Rule 77.3, and that has been up since you've been revoked. So you've been, with all due respect, in clear violation of rule since you've been revoked. And Dr. Tom, as a past board member, you would know that you cannot advertise as a DC when you don't have a license, sir. And you've never removed that off this website. And I do that with every person that comes before. I check their websites.
Sure.
And with all due respect, sir, you're the main front center that I'm the doctor. Come see me, and it has never been removed, and that is clear violation of rule. I don't know if you know that.
I do know that, but I wasn't aware that it was up. Like we took my name off of the wall. My name is off. I don't. The patients know my situation. I have not. I have a chiropractor in both of my facilities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I'm not doing even reported findings. I'm not doing anything. That was just something that was an oversight. I apologize about that.
And I definitely hear what you're saying. It's just very important because that's part of
Absolutely.
advertising.
No,
the website. And so that was just, with all due respect, one concern of mine is how do we differentiate as a board? How do we differentiate? If a violation of a rule, you're wanting to get reinstated. I know in my personal case, if I was wanting to get my license reinstated, I would make sure everything's squeaky clean. Personally.
Sure. And
that's just one thing I had.
And I thought I had. That was an oversight. I apologize about that. We have been trying to do everything by the book. We've been in contact with Miss Matthews, trying to follow through with everything that is necessary. Like I said, I apologize. That was definitely a big oversight.
Do you still have any probation?
Yes, I'm about to be done with that, but,
When?
It should be June of next year.
Okay.
Yes, so I attend AA twice a week. I also do counseling twice a month. And I was doing that prior to my sentencing, so I had already been doing that for a couple of years before.
Do you have your coin in your pocket?
My what?
You have your coin in your pocket?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Board members, just a reminder to turn your microphones on before you speak.
Yes.
Doc, I've got to say that, based on your recovery efforts and all of that, I'm less concerned, but this is pretty blatant. You're the owner of Southwest Chiropractic, right?
Well, my wife and myself, yes, sir.
Okay, so you have control over the things that are put out publicly, because this homepage of your website has you front and center as Dr. Fred Meet Your Chiropractor. It's very tough to make decisions based on assuming you're going to follow board rules when you come in here and you haven't been following board rules, just so clearly and blatantly. It's a difficult decision.
So I'm old school. I'm not very computer inclined. So just so you know, so when we won the award recently, if you look on the thing, it does not say Dr. Aguayo on there. It definitely doesn't. So like I'm the type like, you know, graduated a long time ago. I'm not very good with the computers. I, you know, people email stuff for me. I'm not even great at emailing, you know. So like I said, I apologize. It wasn't blatant in my part. You know, that's something that I definitely wouldn't. We were trying to do everything accordingly because I am kind of a nerd in certain things. Like I said, my kids are, you know, 4.0 students. We're very, you know, when it comes to following the rules, that's well, I mean, as far as following the rules, chiropractic wise, you know, I definitely follow those. Like I said,
Do you own the clinic? Can I say something? Just a moment. Do you own the clinic?
Yes, sir.
You delegate responsibility to monitor your website to someone else?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Syme?
Being a previous member of the board, I knew that he had to be squeaky clean. And to be honest with you, they called me to ask me, okay, am I doing everything correctly? And that was an oversight. I mean, I didn't even think about that either, about, you know, his website. So, I mean, we could nitpick and say, that's it, but if that's the only thing, it was, I apologize too, because I was helping him to make sure he had everything on track. I even called and talked to the ladies one time or a couple times. So he was trying to follow what he needed to do to get reinstated. And they asked me for guidance. And I mean, we didn't even think of that, honestly.
Can you give me some other examples of ways that you've tried to make sure you're not holding yourself out to the public as an active licensee? What other efforts have you taken?
What's that?
Do you have a business card that says doctor on it still? I mean, what other
correct.
efforts?
There's no business cards out there. There's no, I don't even.
We took his name off.
Yeah, just can you run through kind of what you guys
Correct.
did to try
Absolutely.
to be
So
compliant?
my name is not on the board. I don't, you know, interact with the patients at all. I mean, there's not one patient that like, oh, I say hello, I go in and I just go into the back office and that's it. I don't literally have no contact with any of the patients. I was just waiting for this moment. You know, like I said, I'll tell you this, I'm an exceptional chiropractor, exceptional. I'm very good at getting people better. I have not, by any means, as a matter of fact, they all know El Paso's a small town. Everybody knows the situation. Everybody knows, you know, what happened. And there's a lot of people there, you know, prominent people that are waiting for me to get my license back. Now, obviously, it's up to you. It's up to you to make your choice. I would like you. I think I'm a good asset, like I said, you know.
So I think I'm just looking to see what other efforts you've made.
There are no business cards. Like I said, I don't portray myself, you know, I don't say I'm Dr. Aguayo to anybody. I say Fred Aguayo. Like I said, I don't even have interaction with the patients.
And your name's not on the building, it's not on the wall.
No, sir.
So what else have you guys done? So did you take that off, or was it never on the door?
No, it was on the wall. It was on the door.
So you guys made an effort to remove that from the physical
Absolutely.
space? What other
Yes, sir.
efforts have you made?
Well, when we had you know, we won an award. The clinic won an award. It's like from the year before.
I know the best stuff kind
but
of thing.
when it labels us, it doesn't say Dr. Fred Aguayo.
And
on
even
there.
that's nomination stuff, so I'm not even worried about that because the public can call you doctor if they choose. What
Sure.
really we're looking for is anything you have control over. How have you made sure not to hold yourself out as a licensee?
Besides the website, there's literally zero. Besides the website, there's literally zero. Like I said, I'm not a computer genius. This is something that just was left on there. That is definitely not my, you know, but besides that, there's literally not one thing that says or portrays me to be, you know, a doctor in any sense.
You've tried to scrub everything.
Correct. And as a matter of fact, when I sign,
When my wife's raising her hand, I usually give
Yes.
her a chance. No, just kidding.
I do want to mention, hired an additional doctor. We have 3 doctors, and that was one of the big things that we did right away, first of all.
Swap out.
yeah, there's,
Yes.
Yeah.
And we also, like, attorneys that we talked to, we took him off
Okay.
As a matter of fact, even my signature on anything that I sign, just Fred Aguayo. There is no DC behind it, no at all. So there's not even one document where, you know, when I'm applying for a loan or anything, there's no DC. When I'm when I'm signing a check or whatever, or when I'm signing a credit card receipt, there's not any documentation of me putting DC in anything.
Okay. You know, I'm going to have to just take your word that this is an oversight. You just know your website is probably the most public-facing way
Yes.
you're representing
Yes, sir.
yourself.
Absolutely.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve him to sit for the jurisprudence exam.
I have a question, sir.
Yep.
Before that, also his pictures are on the website.
Picture's fine. It's all about holding the practice of chiropractic is defined very strictly as, you know, if you put chiropractor or DC, you have to clearly state if you're not licensed. So there's some real specific rules about that are not being followed. But it sounds like you're aware of it and you've tried to remove it in other places. So what I'd like to do is put a probationary license in place, where if there's an advertising violation or a violation of any kind in the next 3 years, it's immediate revocation. So I'd like to make a motion that we allow him to sit for the jurisprudence exam, and if passed, you'll be awarded a probationary license for 3 years, conditional on revocation on any violation.
Okay.
Second.
We can still discuss.
Okay, motion's been made by Dr. Henry. Thank you for spelling it out clearly. I think since we worked through a loose form of Robert's rules, you can either choose to amend it now based on suggestions, or I can take a second.
Is there a suggestion?
Most of the time, when someone does commits a violation like this, they pay a fine. In fairness to all of our body of licensees who pays fines for doing something like this, perhaps that would be a part of it.
If there's an amendment, I'd listen to it, yeah. Is that also, we need to get advice from counsel? Is that something we can do without a
I think it's
complaint for
something that we could
violation?
do if you wanted to open up an enforcement case, and then we could do like a ticket or something and just knock it out quickly.
I don't think you would need to open an enforcement
Wouldn't?
case.
Just
It's
do-
just a stipulation of
Okay.
licensure that he has to pay a fine and remedy the advertising violation.
What's the typical advertising violation ticket now?
$250 to $500.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
a pretty big thing. Let's, I'd like to amend my previous motion to add a $500 fine for the advertising violation.
I'll second it.
Mr. Holub seconded the motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Congratulations, sir. You've been granted the ability to take jurisprudence exam to get yourself back into practice, and also to reconcile your violation on the advertising.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Keep an eye on your website, please. But
Yes.
other than that, great congratulations and welcome back to the profession.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mike.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Sarah? Oh, go ahead, Joe.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure to clarify everything on our end for Sarah. So that does include the 3-year probation and no advertising. Okay.
Yep.
$500 fine as stipulation of licensure, and then obviously to remove that from the website until he gets fully relicensed.
I guess I make that very clear, like make a phone call to your marketing person when you get home to remove that until your license is back instated. Okay, good, thank you.
I'll be in.
You can add it back.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, sir. You had a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. You can. Once you're licensed, you'll be a licensed doctor of chiropractic with all the freedoms, but if there's a violation, your license will be immediately revoked. Okay. So just be extra careful when you're advertising. Okay, thanks.
I have one more clarification. So the $500 would be before he gets licensed?
As a condition of
Okay,
licensure,
okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Members, the next agenda item is 7B. It's evaluation of criminal history requests for Zachary Ayland. Mr. Allen is interested in pursuing a Doctor of Chiropractic degree. He is requesting an evaluation of his criminal history to see if he would be eligible for licensure in the state of Texas. The applicant is enrolled at Parker University and he wishes to continue his studies there. Applicant has a total of 8 arrests and at least 6 convictions or deferred sentences. There is a staff recommendation on this one to allow Mr. Allen to continue his studies at Parker University to pursue his Doctor of Chiropractic degree. Once the degree has been obtained, he would be eligible to apply for a chiropractic license and would be allowed to sit for the Texas jurisprudence exam at his own expense. This approval would be contingent on any future events and would only be based on the facts we have today. Any future events such as arrests, convictions, or violation of probation orders would result in the termination of this agreement. Mr. Allen is here, and I believe he's got representation. I was incorrect on the other one, but they are here if you have any questions for him.
Would you like to speak to us?
Hello, thank you for taking the time to see me today. Appreciate the invite.
Are you Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I knew who was talking to me.
For sure. And this is my stepdad, and his name's Hamilton McMenemy, and he's going to open, you have an opening statement, don't you?
Right. Yes, I wanted to introduce Zachary Allen. He's my stepson. I'm an attorney practicing since 1969. My name is J. Hamilton McMenemy. And the reason that I wanted to comment was we appreciate Sarah Matthews rounding it all up for us. I'll just mention that Zachary has spent over 2 years with no drugs, no alcohol, no nothing, and therefore has shown himself to be an exemplary example of somebody who wants to change his life 180 degrees and really do great. He spent 1.5 years in retraining in a place called Life Skills, and there learned a lot of things about not doing things that ruins your life. He's performed all of the requirements of all of the legal matters that he had, and his final release will be, or final matter is already ordered to be dismissed. That's the 18th of November. He took two series of classes. He took anatomy and physiology 1 and 2. He took chemistry 1 and 2 as precursor to being admitted to Parker School. And he was able to eke out a 4.0 in all 4 of those classes. And so anyway, needless to say, we're very proud of Zachary, what he's been able to do, and turning his life around. And of course, we certainly want to go along with the recommendation that Sarah came up with, that he would be able to go on to Parker School and would be licensed after he completed Parker School, and we're hoping for a 4.0 all the way through Parker School. So anyway, we want to get the board to let Parker School know so that we don't have any problem with him going, because they agreed to admit him knowing all these things, and then came up at the last minute, and the board at Parker School said, well, no, we were just kidding about when we sent you a letter saying you'd admitted if you made a satisfactory grade in these 4 classes. So we're glad to see that the board is going to correct all this, and appreciate your attention.
Well, one of the things we've charge the schools with is that we would rather you get it checked out to make sure you can get licensed before you spend all the time and money and
Right.
energy getting that. So I appreciate that the Parker board pointed this out as something you needed to do. Trust me, you don't want to graduate and not be able to get licensed. So
That's right, and we're very thankful for that occurrence because, as you could tell from all the reports that Sarah received, it's been exhaustively done, and so we wanted to thank you for taking action on it.
Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Ayland or?
What is your expected graduation date from Parker?
I had just completed the prereqs, so
So you
it would
haven't
be
started yet, so-
yeah, it would just be starting.
So so you're looking about another 3.5 years minimum if you go. Are you planning to go full time or what are you planning?
Yes,
to do?
sir.
Okay. So yeah, we've got a pretty good gap between his previous offense and your graduation date. So do you understand that this approval would be contingent on only the things that we have in front of us? So if anything else happens, you would have to sit in front of that and apply for licensure at that time?
Absolutely.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions before we move forward?
I'll make a motion that we accept staff recommendation.
Great.
Second.
Yeah, so the motion's been made that we allow you to sit for the jurisprudence when you graduate, assuming there's no violations between now and then.
Yes, sir. Motion was made by Dr. Baucom and seconded by Dr. Abraham. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations. Best wishes on
Thank you so
a
much.
successful school career and enjoyment in chiropractic practice.
Appreciate it.
Heartwarming to have father speak on son's behalf with such pride. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Yep.
I'll be in touch. Okay. No problem. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, members, agenda item 7C is a consideration request for applicant Daxton Krugman to sit the Texas jurisprudence exam. Mr. Krugman seeks chiropractic licensure in the state of Texas. He previously held a chiropractic license in the state of Colorado from September 26, 2000 through October 31, 2011. There are no disciplinary actions taken against him by the Colorado Board. Mr. Krugman previously held Texas chiropractic license number 8577 from June 1st of 2000 through November 18th of 2021, when the license was closed due to revocation. There are 3 disciplinary actions taken against him by the Texas Board. Mr. Krugman is requesting approval to take the Texas jurisprudence examination in order to reinstate his Texas chiropractic license. A little bit of background, Mr. Krugman submitted an application for reinstatement of his license on October 2nd, 2022. Once his application was considered complete, he was placed on the board agenda for the TBCE board meeting to be held on February 23rd of 2023. When Mr. Krugman was advised by our former general counsel, Christopher Burnett, of the staff's recommendation to deny his request, a series of events took place. In particular, several harassment email streams were sent to the board regarding his dissatisfaction in this recommendation, and ultimately ended with an arrest by the Texas Department of Public Safety at the H.W. Bush building on February 23rd, 2023. The board met for their quarterly board meeting on this day and considered his application for reinstatement of his license. At the meeting, the board members voted to deny his request to take the jurisprudence examination. Since this time, Mr. Krugman has been dismissed of these charges and has obtained a psychological evaluation on October 14th of 2024 by his psychologist, Dr. R.C. Kramer. Mr. Krugman is requesting reevaluation of his request to take the jurisprudence exam. Applicant has a total of 2 arrests and 0 convictions. The staff recommendation is to deny his request. An applicant is not here for questions.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Have we, since this previous incident here, which I remember vividly, he has also sent, or have we received any more emails of the threatening nature from him to us?
I wouldn't characterize the emails as being quite to the same extent as they were, but when he after he had resolved all of the pending criminal matters and wanted to go ahead and restart this process, we on staff at that time, Patrick was still the executive director, we decided to request that he direct all communications to me rather than Sarah. So I've been the primary point of contact since, I guess, maybe June or July. Yeah. I'll just be candid. The communications had been pretty cordial and professional for the most part, but over the last basically week or two, when I advised him that we had received this most recent psychological evaluation and that we considered his application complete and that we'd go ahead and present him on the agenda for this meeting, I explained to him the importance of him being here to answer any questions, as I was quite certain you would have a lot of questions for him. And I think because of what happened the last time he came, he was really resistant and hostile to that, and he started to make demands basically that we should just go ahead and let him take the jurisprudence examination. And I explained to him multiple times over email that that's not a staff decision, that's a decision that the board has to make. And the emails became a little bit more hostile at that point, and somewhat incomprehensible as well. So I'll let y'all kind of take that as it is, but it's on page 47 of the PDF.
But yeah, I can.
Well, I saw in the materials we have recommendations by 2 family members, the psychologist and a donut shop owner, and that's it.
Make a motion to deny and move forward with staff recommendation.
Motion's been made by Mr. Josh Holub to deny.
Second.
I heard a second by Dr. Balcom. Is there any discussion?
And I do just want to add, again, in my email correspondence with them over the last couple of weeks, I really, probably against my better judgment, but I did really go out of my way to try and convey to him the importance of him being here, and that didn't really seem to go anywhere. So, I fully support Sarah's recommendation.
Yeah.
So for the record, I do consider his prior correspondence before that last meeting to be life-threatening, and the most recent correspondence that I saw to reiterate that by saying that in so many words that we haven't, or some of us haven't reconciled what we've done. So you should consider this person as a threat to your life, as I do. Okay? I'll call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion carries to deny. How we doing? Does anybody want a break?
5 minutes.
Can we have, let's break for 15 minutes. The time is 10:34 a.m. and I want to reconvene in 15 minutes from now, which would be, what, 10:50. The Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners will now reconvene into open session. The time is 10:50 a.m. on October 31st, 2024. The next group of agenda items pertains, oh, by the way, we have 7 of 9 board members present in the room, and I will bring attention when Mr. Holub re-enters the room. The next group of agenda items pertains to matters of enforcement, and as printed in the meeting agenda, I'll point out that the board only anticipates these enforcement matters will be ready for discussion and board action at this meeting, but if the matters are not ready, they may be brought up at a later meeting. Agenda item number 8 calls for discussion and possible action on proposed final decision PFD orders pursuant to Texas Occupations Code 201.555 and 22 TAC 81.10. We have none for this meeting. Agenda item number 9 calls for discussion and possible action on proposed cease and desist orders pursuant to Texas Occupations Code 201.6015 and Texas Government Code 2001.056. We have none for this meeting. Agenda item number 10 calls for discussion and possible action on default orders pursuant to Texas Occupations Code 201.0555, Texas Government Code 2001.056-4, and 2001.058 D through L, and 22 TAC 81.6B. We have none for this meeting. Agenda item number 11 calls for discussion and possible action on proposed agreed orders pursuant to Texas Occupations Code 201.504A1. And our Director of Enforcement, Mr. Chris Walling, I think that you're going to do this, right? Joseph McLaughlin, our General Counsel, will identify each case individually by the licensee's name, license number, and our case number, and provide the board with the relevant information. And then following his advice, I'll recognize a motion and a second, and then we'll vote and follow the same format. Joseph?
Thank you, Dr. Bronson. We do have all 4 of these agenda agreed orders for agenda item 11. They should all be in your meeting materials in the Google Drive. Some of them kind of slid in at the last minute, but thankfully they were all able to get the signed documents to me, so we can get these all taken care of today. Agenda item 11A is the matter of Crystal Jasmine Caldwell, license number 11446, TBCE case number 2023-004. This is a pretty straightforward case regarding a failure to timely provide patient records. Request was made February 24th, 2022, and licensee acknowledged receipt of the request March 23rd of the same year. Multiple attempts were made to obtain the records by the requestor, and the records were never provided. Complaint was filed with the board September 23rd of 2022, and the records were then provided soon after that. Licensee violated Rule 76.2H, 22 Texas Administrative Code Section 76.2H. Board order is for the licensee to pay an administrative penalty of $500 to the board within 30 days of the effective date of this agreed order. Staff recommendation is that the board approve the agreed order.
Before any motion, I will recognize that Mr. Josh Holub did re-enter the room. We have 8 of 9 board members present, maintaining our quorum. Thank you.
I make a motion to agree with the staff recommendation.
Seconded.
Motion was made by Dr. Abraham and seconded by Dr. Henry to move forward with staff recommendation. Any discussion? All in favor signify by an aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Agenda item 11B, the matter of Donald Joseph Daniels, license number 4424, TBCE case number 2023-021. This case originally arose out of a complaint alleging injury to a patient during treatment. Staff's investigation was unable to substantiate those allegations. However, the records provided in response to the notice of complaint did contain numerous deficiencies regarding the board's record-keeping requirements. Specifically, the records lacked the following: patient history, symptoms, examination findings, assessment and diagnosis, prognosis, and a treatment plan. The requirements, the minimum requirements for patient treatment records are included in Board Rule 76.1, subsection E. I won't read it all out, but it lists, sort of a laundry list of, these are the basic things that have to go into a set of treatment records, at least for an initial visit. And Board's order is for the licensee to pay an administrative penalty of $500 to the board within 30 days of the effective date, and to complete a board-approved continuing education course on documentation and record keeping. Staff recommendation is that the board approve the agreed order.
I've got a comment. So is there a way, or do we ever go back and audit them and make sure that they are keeping up with the standards? Because after reading that, that's a pretty significant violation here.
I'm sorry.
And would he be subject to an audit at any given time?
Not under the terms of this agreed order. However, that is something that the enforcement committee, we can consider moving forward. I actually think that's a great idea. So
We've done
thank
that
you
in
for
the past too, where we've actually put in.
So you've already done this agreed order with this?
Well, so he's signed it and agreed to it. Board has to approve and ratify it. So if you decide you don't, want to approve this, then that's fine. I can go. You essentially can give me new marching orders, so to speak, and then I can go back to him.
I personally would like to have it changed where he's subject to an audit.
Can we approve that now, and if he agrees to it, move forward?
No, he would have to. This would have to get edited, changed up, and then he would have to sign a new copy.
We would approve that at our next meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
And if I'm over the top too much, I understand. I hope you understand where I'm coming from, because I think it's easy for them. Okay, I'll go do this class, but I'm going to keep up with my ways. And I think sometimes, how can I say it? If licensees knew that there's a potential audit to make sure that they were doing it the right way, it might hopefully clean things up. That's all I'm trying to accomplish.
I will add, I know this isn't contained in the four corners of the document, so normally I don't do this, but and I should have included this in the fact findings, but this licensee actually had a very clean disciplinary record and had been licensed a very long time. So I do think that was part of what the enforcement committee took into consideration with this.
That was what I was going to add. So typically we'll look at their past. But I know that I'm new on it, but what we've been doing is looking at their past record and seeing how long they've been licensed and seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have actually done something very similar to what you're asking for people that have been second time.
All right, I'll hold off this time, but I just think something we might want to consider from now on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great suggestion.
Well, can the staff just audit anyway at the discretion of the staff?
Well, we would have to have a complaint if it's not
We're a
part of
complaint
some other
organization.
pre-existing agreed order.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Unless they waive that through an agreed order.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bad idea to add to
First
several
complaint for
agreed
this
orders.
doctor?
Doesn't mean we have to do it, but just make sure that they're waiving that protection of a complaint-driven audit.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I like that idea.
I do too, actually. Yeah.
So do we have a motion in place?
I'll move to accept.
Dr. Baucom has moved to accept.
Second.
And seconded by Dr. Neal. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Brings us to agenda item 11C, matter of Christopher Robert Zano, license number 10169, TPCE case number 2024-003. This is also a patient records request case. Excuse me. The request for the records was made on August 22nd, 2023. Complaint was filed with the board on September 8th, 2023, and we actually held off a little bit on filing the notice of complaint just to give the doctor a little bit more time, because that was a pretty quick turnaround on the part of the person who was the requestor who was filing the complaint. In his response to the notice, respondent did accept responsibility for the issue and had explained that he hadn't been physically present in the clinic during the relevant time and had delegated to staff. And that, combined with some technical issues, is what caused the oversight. However, did promptly provide the records once he had the opportunity to do so, and took steps to implement new processes to prevent that from happening in the future. So this was a violation, again, of Rule 76.2H regarding requests for patient records. And the order was for the licensee to take and pass the jurisprudence examination again at his expense within 30 days of the effective date of the agreed order, and also to complete a board-approved continuing education course in documentation and ethics training at his expense. Staff recommendation is that the board approve the agreed order.
Seconded.
Who made the motion? Okay, the motion was made by Dr. Baucom and seconded by Dr. Abraham. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Finally, brings us to agenda item 11D, the matter of Dr. Robert Da Silva, license number 7121, TBC case number 2024-128. So this case actually originally arose out of a complaint regarding unlicensed practice of chiropractic. It took us a little bit of investigation on the part of our investigators, but the individual who was alleged to have provided chiropractic services without a license, that allegation was actually substantiated and was handled separately with a cease and desist. However, in the course of the investigation, it was uncovered that Dr. Da Silva was the owner of that clinic. He was not physically present at the clinic on the date in question. Excuse me. And the investigation found that there was typically another licensee who would normally be present at the clinic and would have been providing all treatments. However, that licensee was sick that day and wasn't able to be at the clinic. And so this employee, who had actually graduated from chiropractic school but just never obtained licensure, sort of took it on himself to go ahead and provide treatment. His rationale for doing so was that he felt the patient was in a significant amount of pain, and that he felt he could provide some quick relief and avoid having the patient have to reschedule and come back. So I think there were some good intentions there, but obviously that's a pretty significant rule violation. The employee did accept responsibility for his actions and acknowledge that what he did was a violation. Additionally, upon receiving notice of complaint for this specific case, respondent, Dr. Da Silva, explained he was unaware of the treatment. However, he did accept responsibility for not properly overseeing his employees. He did note that he had in the past specifically instructed that employee not to provide any adjustments or anything that would have required a license. However, he took immediate corrective actions, including enhanced employee training, communication, office surveillance, and revising office protocols. So the violation here is Board Rule 78.6, subsection A8, which states that a licensee shall adequately supervise staff, students, and recent graduates. The board's order is for the respondent licensee to pay an administrative penalty of $1,000 to the board within 30 days of the effective date of this agreed order. Staff recommendation is that the board approve the agreed order.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Dr. Henry and seconded by Dr. Wofford. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Ready for me to move on?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Agenda item number 12 calls for discussion and possible action on required suspension or revocation of licenses for certain offenses pursuant to Texas Occupations Code 201.5065. Fortunately, none for this meeting. Now we move to board policy discussions, where agenda items under this heading include topics which have, for various reasons, become worthy of our discussion. And any discussion of these items in this open meeting is a way for us to share information with each other on issues that don't necessarily warrant rulemaking but deserve our attention. Please feel free to discuss these topics, ask questions, offer comments. The Board may discuss but take no formal action on these items, and although no rule proposals will be considered, the board may direct the staff as a result of the discussions. And that would be directed to Dr. Boyd Bush. So agenda item 13 under this heading is reserved for a discussion on the use of artificial intelligence by the board and in chiropractic practice. And since it was my idea to put this on the agenda, I'll share with you some of the thoughts that I put in writing. So this topic, has been an item of discussion in the past few FCLB workshops, and most recently on the first day of my GEDP course by an information and privacy officer, actually two of them with the DIR. Some of the key points that were made is that the technology is rewarding, but certainly not without risk. The field of AI is broad. We're mostly concerned about what's called generative AI, which includes data synthesis and language processing, along with virtual assistants. 2 years ago, the greatest challenges for using AI were budgetary restrictions, competing priorities, and the lack of dedicated personnel and qualified staff. Today, especially in state government, we're largely concerned about security. In TBCE, or the TBCE, in my opinion, should consider three potential problems. One would be unintended sharing of PHI, or private health information. Two would be an inaccurate record of doctor-patient encounters. And three, distribution of advice which could be misleading or outside chiropractic scope of practice. Potential problems number 2 and 3 may result from factually incorrect or fabricated answers due to limitations in the AI training data or architecture. Hallucinations, yep, that's a thing. Hallucinations can occur for a variety of reasons, including external manipulation, programming errors, or a lack of contextual understanding. In healthcare, this is a risk that, depending on the context, could have severe unintended consequences. While no Texas laws specifically regulate AI today, the DIR indicates that we can expect numerous bills related to AI in the forthcoming legislative session. Meanwhile, the presenters recommended that each state agency adopt an acceptable use policy for AI, and they shared their own policy included in their employee handbook. Yesterday, I sent a copy of this policy along with other examples and considerations to Boyd, since he directs the agency. As for problems with AI in a clinical setting, I came across an article with a scenario where the doctor would enter an exam or treatment room without a chart and without any direct use of the computer. The doctor would simply activate a listening device as part of a generative AI system, which would then document the encounter. The concern, of course, is where is the patient's PHI being processed and stored forever? So this, one of the documents, ChatGPT doc, I think I sent it to you. So meanwhile, I just think we should, and I know that you're on top of this, Boyd, track the AI legislation, consider our own policy for protecting licensees and the public. And I think that you wanted to speak about this.
Absolutely, because it's very important. And in fact, we have to divide this down into at least 2 different sections. One is board operations, 2 is chiropractor operations. And where we have the wherewithal to regulate how chiropractors use it, that's going to be an important conversation. Research will need to be involved, because here's the thing. Right now, it is very, in fact, I did this. I went online and I asked my ChatGPT, I said, I have a sciatica. How can I treat this with chiropractic? And it goes out there and farms all this information, puts it into, and I said, a one-page summary. And so as a result, if I do that as a chiropractor, then I can hand this to the patient and say, okay, here, I'm done, we're through. Now, the problem becomes if the chiropractor does it, they can look over it and say, it's okay, this looks nice, and they can sign off on it. If an employee does it and they don't understand what is on the page completely, they give that to the patient, then there could be a lot of things that could hurt a patient. And so we've got two tracks. With us, the same thing. As far as what we do in state government, we're going to be more limited because it really works very well for programming and technology and compiling data and making reports and so forth. And so there's not a lot of things that we as a board will use other than summary or presentation purposes. But whichever track it is, and I'm finding through the literature, the key is no matter what happens, we have to have a human intervention before anything is ever distributed. And so as we put the policy together, we've got to make sure and find a way that we address both sides of the coin and also address what we do with the information and who reviews it and how it's used. So there's a lot that's involved. The DIR's on page 7 of the presentation in DIR, they've got a really good start of these are the things you do to put together a policy to make it work. But one thing that we have to consider that DIR doesn't is we also have a whole licensee base that we have to deal with as well. And so it's interesting how many articles you can read that said, AI, especially the generative AI, is great. It'll help you do this. It'll streamline. No real substance to it in so many of the articles. And so we're going to have to dig down into it to see, okay, what are the exacts? The second thing that you talked about is personal health information is every one of these chat GPT type things collect data, use that data to make what they do better. And so if there's anything of personal nature that's put in there, it's out in the Ethernet forever. And so that's going to be one of our big things that we've got to make sure and focus in on. And that's what I saw when I was looking through this information as well. And so that's some of the insights that I drew. But it was kind of fun having the chat GPT. In fact, there's a document, the legislature, the House has a committee that is looking into this. They've had groups from the industry come in and testify, which are very enlightening. And they put out a report, interim report that they've put out. And so the legislature is looking at how we do it as well. And so ChatGPT actually took that document that they put out and summarized it for me. And so now I don't know the verification of the data that it gave me. I'll have to go back and double check that. But that's one of those examples that, okay, it's great information. I could spout this off without doing the research to make sure it's accurate. And then where do we go from there? So there's going to be a lot of caution that we will have to put out there. I mean, it'd be easier to say, okay, sorry, no ChatGPT, we're done. No AI, you just have to do it. But that's not going to happen. That's my thoughts and insight.
Not bad for an old school guy. And I'm pretty sure I'm older and you're older than one of our guests who claimed to be old school. And here we are. This is way beyond a website. Any comments from the younger generation of our board members?
Yeah, I'll say, because we were just discussing this at the public school in Bastrop, and it's not a matter of will we allow it, because the workers, the bosses, employers are requiring people to know how to use it. So AI is gonna be there whether we want it or not. So it's a matter of figuring out how, from my standpoint, how the doctors can utilize it, what their responsibilities will be from the patient standpoint, and that sort of thing. Yeah. So it's something that's it's here. It's not going away. We're using it in schools. Teachers are using it. Mm-hmm. And the students are using it to learn, and a lot of homeschool groups now are using it as well, mm-hmm. For replacing teachers. So it's pretty it's huge.
And I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like to add a little bit extra also. You're exactly right. It's not whether we will or not, but how. Right. And the thing that it's interesting. If you think there's nothing in the world that's new. We've all heard that, right? We call this artificial intelligence. Well, Excel spreadsheet is artificial intelligence. online banking. That's artificial intelligence. So we've used artificial intelligence for years. We're just now packaging it different. It's now easier, it's more robust, and they've put more resources into it. But it's all the same type of thing. It's the progression on how we do it. Back in my day when I was a school teacher, was really the forefront of the internet and information available on the internet. We had to subscribe to a checking program that checked for plagiarism on papers that were turned into us, because we couldn't always search everything that we needed to. So we put it in the search engine, it reviews and says, hey, this was actually taken from this other paper. So to your point, exactly, we're going to have to deal with it, and we've already had to deal with with artificial intelligence as it is. It's just presenting itself in a new package. So
I think probably from here moving forward, you guys are going to be speaking over my head. So there you have it. And it's just going to be interesting to sit back and see what happens with this for me. Any other comments? So let's go ahead and move to agenda item 14, which calls for, oh, by the way, we're moving from the board policy discussions to the category of rules for proposal. So this will allow the board to act on rules for proposal. These next items, I'll introduce each item individually as it is listed on the agenda, and then call. Okay, and then I'll call on our general counsel, Joseph McLaughlin, for his advice, and then Dr. Henry will speak on each item as well, and then we'll.
I think Joe and I are going to switch that, but yeah, we'll get it figured out.
Either way you guys want to do it is certainly fine with me. I just want to announce agenda item 14 calls for discussion on drafting the repeal and replacement of a rule relating to continuing education, 22 TAC 73.1, which is titled Continuing Education Requirements for Licensees. Also, before you start, I'll remind you that we have two guests who wanted to speak on this item. Would you like to go first? Or would you like?
Yeah, I'll just introduce kind of where this came from. Was we did last year several meetings, including a stakeholder meeting on continuing education, and one of the big things that we heard loud and clear was that everybody who is licensed here has taken a jurisprudence exam and has read our board rules, and that the 3 hours of board rule CE every year may be overkill. So we've reduced that to 2 hours of mandated content, which are going to include focusing on rule updates, which I think serves our purpose. Hopefully that means people will actually pay attention for that hour and hear the updates, and we'll get more of the effect we're looking for from these. The other change on this rule is that we added the ability to use TBCE meeting attendance as live CE hours. So I think that will take care of a lot of the questions and the loud feedback that we received. And Joe, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Sorry. In your materials, you should have basically a redlined version of the rule. For this, I went ahead and just took the current language of the rule and just made edits based on my notes from our last meeting back in August of just some general thoughts on what people wanted to see. So obviously first, in subsection H, you'll see the change from 4 to 2 hours. I went ahead and just struck subsection I and added that information about the 1 hour relating to chiropractic risk management. So the updated version of this would basically say, as part of the 16 required hours, licensee has to complete a minimum of 2 hours board required courses, which includes 1 hour related to rules, ethics, documenting, and then 1 hour related to risk management. As far as like the subject matter of what we want those 2 hours to be over, I think I don't really have any thoughts on that. I think that's obviously really a policy thing for you guys to decide. So that's just what I went with. This is just a first draft. So
and I don't think this needs to be in a rule, but I think by reducing it to 1 hour with the what we're asking the CE providers to focus on is rule updates. And so I don't think we're going to change the language on that for that, but I think that's the directive.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would actually,
I want to hear from.
oh, sorry, yeah.
So,
Ms. Quattlebaum.
Yes, I would call Michelle Quattlebaum up to the mic.
I wanted to just go over a couple more things on it real quick. The only other two changes that I added were new subsections R and S at the bottom. And so something else that we had discussed was allowing for a licensee to claim CE credit by attending board meetings. I think, Dr. Bronson, that was an idea that you had had. So these new subsections R and S are just attempts to kind of create some language to allow for that. Obviously, any sort of changes to how the board records CE credit is going to involve a conversation with Jennifer as well and Sarah. I'm happy to let them weigh in on any of that as well. And then, we had discussed that a little bit, and so that subsection S is just kind of a procedure for how do we want someone to actually go about claiming this credit. Jennifer had explained that we can basically, she can create a roster, and so the meeting would basically function, correct me if I'm wrong, but function like a course. She would create a course roster, and then we would have sign-in sheets. So as the rule says, somebody would sign in at the beginning and sign out at the end. And then we would make that just general credit. That wouldn't go towards the 2 board required hours.
It would be some of your live hours, but not the 2 focused hours.
The other question that I had on that was, how do we want to determine how many hours? Obviously board meetings vary in length. Generally, we average about 2 hours. So what we decide is that we would cap it at 2 hours tops, even if the meeting went longer for some reason.
8 per year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's basically all I have. We have public comment, so I want to go ahead and turn the floor over to them if you're okay with
Can I
that.
ask a real quick question about that before we do that?
Sure.
That would include these regular 4 meetings we have a year, but it wouldn't include like the special. Yeah. So the way it's written, it would properly handle these.
Yeah.
Not the special meetings that are held. And
Yeah, it would be worded regularly scheduled board meeting.
And it is.
Yeah, and in subsection R, I have it as attends a regular quarterly board meeting.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Question.
Okay, so I'll introduce to you JD and honorary DC and instructor of this course, Michelle Quattlebaum.
Yes, thank you. And also, I mean, most of you know who me and probably don't ever want to hear me talk, but to a little bit more about my background, because I actually have a day job other than the teaching of continuing education and reps. I'm a trial lawyer, and for more than, when I was 2 years old, I think I started. But anyway, more than 40 years I've represented chiropractors. I have tried to verdict more cases for a chiropractor than anybody in the United States. And then through the evolution, we started doing board matters. And so enforcement probably talks to me way more than they wish they did. But so my comments are not only brought because I do teach the course, but I see the doctors on the other side. I am the one who takes their phone calls sobbing that they've been arrested. Or 2 days ago, I get an email because Chris had sent a letter. And it's not because Chris did a bad job, he did a good job with the letter, but how am I going to feed my children? Or how am I going to do this? So over the years, I would make, from a financial standpoint, if y'all pass this rule, I will make a whole lot more money. Thousands of dollars representing people who've been sued for malpractice and who have damaged the public in some way, or allegedly damaged the public in some way by violating board rules. And when you say, well, we've read the rules, I teach the rules every month. And there's one question that obviously people still don't know the answer to, because 2 out of the 4 cases you talked about today violated the same rule, which is, how many days do you have to produce your records if they're requested? When I ask that question every single month in my class, between 50 and 100% get it wrong every time. And I would venture to guess there's people, and I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, that don't know the answer to that question. It is a rule that has not been changed. It's not only a board rule, but it is a HIPAA rule. House Bill 300, passed about 8-10 years ago by the state legislature, also has that rule. Your licensees violate that. So just reading the rules doesn't really soak it in. But also in the 4 hours that's taught, and we're not only teaching those rules, but we teach, how about the No Surprises Act, the Cures Act? How about BOI? Has everybody filed their forms now for the BOI? Because it's due in January 1st. If anybody, because people are already freaking out about it on the internet going, what in the heck is this? And so all y'all need to file that form. So there's a lot of different things that I need to do, and we cannot do it in an hour, or them sitting back here for an hour to learn to save themselves. Okay, my job, more or less, is to save the chiropractor from losing his license, from being involved by paying fines, but also hurting the public. Y'all's duty is to protect the public. And it surprised me. Yes, people bitch and moan because they have to spend 4 hours a year listening to their rules that they don't know, but also to know other things, because there's not just y'all's board rules that affect them, rules and regulations that they need to know. And and I Googled it because that's about the best I can do. 8,760 hours in a year. So out of 8,760 hours, we're here talking about giving them back 2 hours. If we can save them hurting the public, hurting themselves, by teaching rules more. I would actually want more, not because I teach the class, but because I hate those phone calls that I have to put the Humpty Dumpty back together again. And if anybody's ever gotten one of Chris's letter, and I say Chris's, the both of them, it was so much easier. Amy, you need to change your name. Okay, but it is like their world comes, I mean, it's amazing. If any of you have ever, y'all are on the board, so you're probably, even if you get the letter, I'm not going to worry too much. It is a devastating blow, and I take calls at midnight and at 11, but seriously, day before yesterday, how am I going to feed my children? And he did, he screwed up. We know that, and Chris and I have been working to help him, and he probably knows what I'm talking about. So I have a problem. I know I hear the bitching and moaning. They really complain that I talk about sex too much, and as Nick and Josh know, and on enforcement, there's a reason we're talking about sex a lot, because the cases have exploded on sex. And so continuing ed is, I know they don't listen. I can't make y'all listen to me. If I teach it live, people are out having cocktail with their friends and drinking at the convention instead of sitting in class. Or, I can't make you concentrate. But to give up because they don't want to hear it, y'all protect the public, and it needs to be done. And I need to protect the doctors from losing their license or whatever. Or I also, and I tell them when they bitch about, I don't have, we know we're not supposed to have sex with our patients. I go to Europe every year because people still have sex with their patients. And I would like to go first class from now on. So if you change it,
yeah,
I'm pretty
I'll
much
tell you
guaranteed
that
it.
one of the thought processes behind this is very much that with 2 hours, we're hoping people will pay attention, and that the content will be really distilled down to what we feel like is the most important, which is updates, and risk management's the other hour.
Okay,
So the way we wrote this is that the risk management hour is going to be focused on the things that you're seeing those violations on. So I really hope that you continue to do that.
Well, and it is, you can do that. And then I know that the way we teach, and of course I teach it different than everybody else, and whether you like the way I teach it or don't, we teach it. But, we break it up 2 and 2. I mean, if I'm doing it at live, which I don't really do that many live, I do TCCs, I guess. And then it's 4 hours, they do it. But we do 2 hours and 2 hours. And But the, in that 2 hours is not, we are talking about postgraduate people that are smart and they have their doctorate degree. They should be able to concentrate for 2 hours. I realize that is hard. And we ask, 5 minutes may be a problem because has everybody written down how many days you have to produce your records to see if everybody made 100? But the
15.
We do that. Pardon?
15 days.
Business days.
She's wrong and he's right. Yeah, it's 15 business days.
Plus, you can send a. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not going to get.
Anyway, yeah. Then there's a 5-day rule if you're going to charge and all that. Yeah, but but I understand where you're coming from with it. But I know that people are complaining, and right now they're probably going to have it's Halloween, they'll have a Michelle doll that they're sticking pins in because I'd recommend 6 or 8 hours. But not because I teach it, it's because I want to correct it. I want to see people do better, to know their rules. And by cutting it back, because everybody's too lazy to spend their 8,760 hours to give us 4. I got calls wanting to sue Jennifer because she makes them take, there's Jennifer, makes them take the human trafficking course. And I'm like, seriously? Give up an hour of your life every 2 years to save a child from being sexually trafficked? That's disgusting that you think an hour is too much to give for that. And I told him I wouldn't sue you, Jennifer, since it wasn't your rule. So anyway, I'm over my time and I apologize. It's something we're passionate about. Kathy Jones and I do teach. We're one of many that teach the board hours. I think we try to teach it correctly. I think there's been a problem with that. And Dr. Wofford has been doing great with trying to reel that in, and people that are trying to sell something. We don't sell anything. We give away stuff, forms and things like that during our webinars. But it is something we're passionate because it's been, Kathy and I are older than we should be. And, but we, everybody's become friends, they're family. We don't want to see them get hurt. We want to give them continuing ed and all. And we include in there Medicare, because we have Medicare audits and we have HIPAA investigations that they have to know about, and things like that. So, risk management, documentation ethics, it's a full, I can never really finish. And actually, in a few minutes, I'm teaching mine in,
Thank you,
somebody's
Michelle.
office.
So we're kind of
Maybe
back
I'm
into
over
workshop mode. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the
Okay,
input.
thanks.
Steve Tullius.
Okay, so I would like to move that we propose this rule.
I'm sorry, Dr. Henry, we have another guest that asked to speak on this rule.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was 2 on this rule.
Would you like to come up to the microphone? No? Okay. Yes, sir,
Okay.
Dr. Henry.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and move that we propose this rule for publication and public comment into the Texas Register.
Apologies, actually, on the agenda, we just have it as a discussion, not possible action. That was my understanding.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
Because we were still
Always
kind of
written as,
workshopping quite a bit.
So do we need to put this on for proposal, or can we make that motion without, since this is on the agenda item?
I would like.
So what I would do for this is put it on the agenda for discussion and possible action on proposing repeal and replacement.
Okay.
My assumption, based on our prior discussions, is that this would kind of get referred to Rules Committee for additional workshopping based on the comments and feedback that we've gotten today. And so,
is there any other board feedback on this rule? Then I'll go ahead and pull down that motion.
Yes, thank you for the clarification on the agenda being a discussion only and not possible action. And I would love to see our Rules Committee meet on this and consider
we had multiple times.
Okay,
So
it's going to be up to you as the Rules Chair
propose
whether
this
you
on
meet
that next
again. And but please consider me in any correspondence within your meeting as a de facto member of your committee. Agenda item number 15 calls for discussion and possible action on proposing the repeal and replacement of a rule relating to complaints, 22 TAC 80.4, schedule of penalties. Joseph?
All right, so shifting gears a little bit, this rule proposal, and this is something you can actually propose today, is really just primarily a cleanup. We made a pretty significant change to our penalty matrix back in, I believe it was 2022. Obviously, we had done at that point a ton of shifting rules around and substantive changes to rules as well. So we needed to update it so that this attachment that you see is actually part of the rule, so it has to be changed through the formal rulemaking process, just like any rule. So one big change that we made at the time, and this is just something for y'all to consider. We had originally had 4 categories, and they were just divided by the maximum amount of financial penalty that we could assess based on the infraction. We changed that to just 2 categories, and the 2 categories are simply, does it have to be reported to the National Practitioner Data Bank based on the Medicare laws, or is it something that the agency would have discretion on? And so category 1 are the more serious patient-centric violations that have to be reported to NPDB. Category 2 are the things that the board would have discretion on. The vast majority of edits that I made were simply fixing rule numbers to align with our current rules. A lot of that was in advertising and delegation. We had done some splitting where basically we were taking rules and splitting them into 2 separate rules, so that required a lot of updating the rule numbers. There was one change that I wanted to, well, there's a few actually. Let me toggle my view here for just a second. On advertising, and this is basically just me suggesting this. We get a lot of complaints on advertisements that are outside of scope of practice, and one big change that we made probably about a year ago now is to start trying to utilize the administrative tickets to get cases closed out quicker. And because we get such a large volume of these advertising complaints, that's something we want to try and do when the doctor takes quick remedial action to fix any advertising issues. However, and so that if y'all want to follow along, this is page 3 of the Word document. I would like to propose that we switch the advertising services outside the scope of practice to a Category 2 violation from Category 1. If something is Category 1, then we have to report it to NPDB. And so that can be, a simple advertising violation for advertising out of scope can get reported, and that can have really serious adverse consequences on a doctor's practice, their ability to be credentialed with insurance. And so that becomes a major hiccup to trying to get these cases resolved quickly. So that's what I want to propose with this, is that we switch that to Category 2, which means that we don't have to, it gives staff discretion to report that to the NPDB. And so then a lot more of those cases can be closed a lot quicker with either the administrative tickets or the agreed orders.
And those still could be referred if it was more of a serious violation.
Right. And so I should have included this, so I apologize, but in our disciplinary guidelines rule, it states that for purposes of reporting to NPDB and SINBAD as well, anything where it's like sort of repetitious violations or really egregious violations, those we still have discretion to report. So if it's a situation where board and staff agree that, hey, this is a really major violation, even though we don't technically have to report it to NPDB, we want to because we feel that there was sort of a bad intent there or bad faith on the part of the licensee, rather than a lot of them are just honest mistakes where someone gets mixed up and or they get bad advice, something like that. So But that's really the only like substantive change that I wanted to propose with it. Everything else is just, like I said, making sure that rule numbers and subsections conform based on our recent changes.
So I would recommend that we go ahead and propose this rule as it is listed as an action item for today's meeting. And so I'll make a motion that we propose propose the repeal and replacement of this rule as written.
Second.
Motion was made by Dr. Henry, seconded by Dr. Abraham. Any
No.
discussion? No? Seconded by Dr. Mix. Thank you. I heard it. Is there any discussion from any other board members? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Agenda item 16 calls for discussion and possible action on proposing the repeal and replacement of a rule relating to business practices. 22 TAC 75.5 is titled Prepaid Treatment Plans. Mr. McLaughlin or Dr. Henry?
Yeah, we've been talking about this business practices issue for a while, and then there's a multitude of different business arrangements that are out there now, ranging from annual concierge memberships that provide certain levels of services to prepaid treatment plans in the traditional sense on cash practices, and it's a pretty complex issue. This is a draft that we had put together, I believe, toward the end of last year and have been working through. We also have a second rule that's part of this agenda item that splits out membership plans as a separate rule. And this is really more just an update for the board to be able to provide comment and feedback. So we're kind of toying with two different directions of trying to really specify different types of arrangements or a more broad business practices rule that would cover some more general things.
I think you've done a great job on this. I read it, and I was very impressed, so I appreciate your work on that.
And I have to give Christopher and Joe a lot of that credit too, but this was something that came from another stakeholder meeting from, I think, almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah, that one was from a while ago.
Yeah, so this draft's been in the works for a while, just keeps getting bumped down on the priority list.
Yeah.
I think it's needed. Okay, well, I think that an update is coming for sure.
So,
yeah, go ahead, Joe.
yeah, so as Dr. Henry said, the idea with this is really we would propose and replace 75.5 and give it, updated language. Substantively, there's not really a ton of changes in the new version, but it borrowed a lot from Christopher's drafts. I had to do some digging in the rulemaking drive, but I found him. And so I do think that this reads a little bit better. That's just my personal opinion, though. Everybody else, please feel free to weigh in. However, the important aspect, as Dr. Henry said, is that this would sort of have a corresponding additional separate rulemaking action for proposing a new rule, a separate new rule. And so that's the agenda item 16B. That would be a new rule, 75.10, and that's meant to put some regulations in place for membership plans. This is the aspect of the rule that we think is probably going to generate a lot of commentary, a lot of public comment. The membership model has really exploded in popularity over the last, I don't know what you would say, maybe 5 to 10 years. Primarily, I think the Joint is probably the biggest example of that, but there are a lot of other franchises that utilize it as well, and even just a lot of independent practices, I think. So,
A lot of business in general.
The memberships, continuously updating memberships, don't really fall into kind of the neat prepaid treatment plan model. So that's the idea with this, that there really probably needs to be a separate rule if that's something that the board, as the policymaker, feels needs to be regulated in some manner. As to the actual substance of the 75.10, subsection A, just an attempt to define a membership plan. Subsection C, so this is a key point. Again, probably going to generate a lot of commentary, but the idea being to mirror the prepaid treatment plan rule, we would allow either a licensee or a patient to cancel the plan in writing at any time without cause and without any fee or penalty. So that's just what we have that we're working on here. I suspect there will be, like I said, a lot of comments on that. So I don't know if that's something that y'all want to discuss now. This is just a draft, so nothing's been proposed yet.
After Dr. Neal shares her concerns, I do have a comment as well. Dr. Neal.
Is there a place in here where it says they must request cancellation in writing?
Yeah, so that's going to be subsection D, or excuse me, C. So just so everybody's on the same page. Agenda item 16B, you see on the new section, subsection C, a licensee or patient may cancel in writing a membership plan at any time without cause.
There's some new language that's come out in some other fields as far as making it as easy to sign up and as easy to cancel as it is to sign up, that we're probably going to incorporate as far as if you can sign up by phone, you can cancel by phone. I mean, we're going to look at some of the stuff that's out there in the rest of the business world, because if you look at the way that this is going, is that membership and recurring memberships in the business world have just exponentially exploded, and that's just something we're going to see in our businesses as well. And so we want to be sure that we're mirroring federal regulations along with our regulatory issues at the board. So, yeah.
I happened to be listening to the TV about a month ago, and on the news, just an item came up that regarding gym memberships. I'm pretty sure that was it. Gym memberships, proposed legislation that a person can cancel with a click of the mouse. Specifically.
Yeah, if that's the way that it took to sign up. That's kind of the way that law is being, you're talking about the same
So
law.
I'm assuming that we're tracking that.
Yeah,
right?
that's part of what the language changes I want to tweak, is that's been a big push, and I think that makes sense.
That's the one that I'm talking about, the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You've seen it in several states too.
Couple other provisions in here that I wanted to highlight for everyone's consideration. The subsection G states that a licensee may not renew a patient's membership plan for more than 1 month at a time. I personally don't really have any thoughts on that one way or the other, but that's probably also something that would get a lot of potential pushback. So I just wanted y'all to be aware of that. And then the subsection K, which states that a licensee may not permit a patient to receive an amount of chiropractic services during the period of the membership plan that exceeds the generally accepted standards of care of chiropractic practice. So the idea with that is to try and prevent over-treating. I don't know. I'm actually kind of curious y'all's thoughts on, do you think that that's a little vague, or, maybe could that be written better?
One of the big issues we run into is that prepaid treatment plans were very specific, treating a specific issue with a specific number of treatments, whereas membership plans really fall more into the wellness world, where there's not a lot of standard accepted care on what wellness looks like. And so that's probably something that in the committee will suggest striking, unless you guys have some other feedback on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many
definitions.
Things like, age, athletic ability, how, what someone's job is. Do they live on a beach or?
Well, and just performance, athletes are going to get adjusted at a totally different rate. So I think that is a little bit vague on there.
Yeah.
So we'll take a look at that.
Can I say one thing on that?
Sure.
On our side of enforcement, what we've seen with treatment plans, and Chris has brought it up several times about, they'll set up a treatment plan. Let's just say we're going to charge you $3,500 would be the total for the treatment plan. But if you sign up today, we're going to give you this discount. If you pay so much, we'll give you, it'll be $2,500. But then the person cancels and they charge them the $3,500 because that's the cost of the
Standard
package
rate.
you cut out too early. So take that in consideration.
Yeah, that's got to be handled, because that's,
Yeah.
I mean, is that not basically creating a dual fee schedule?
No, it's a time of service discount thing. There's some case
It's a
law behind
penalty
that.
the way we look at it.
So they can do that?
Yeah, legally you can. But board rule and legal don't always match up on these business practices, which is where this is such a sensitive subject.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of them will word it where the last 5 visits are free, so then they're covered because they're not changing their fee. There's a lot of ways that are around this, which is where every time we step into this world, from a board perspective, we just have to be really, really cognitive and cautious about it.
It just seems kind of in my opinion, pretty unethical if somebody wants to cancel it and you charge them the full rate and you've talked them into a different rate.
Yeah, it's contract law. It's got to depend on it's got to be clearly spelled out. Otherwise, it is a penalty. There's a lot of rules involved in that.
And so is that something we can't really touch on in this rule, you think?
I think that we can. It just leaves us, yeah. I mean,
think
we can do a lot of
protect the
things. It's really how far do we want to push our regulatory into the business practice when it comes to protecting the public? So, contract law is a whole separate thing, and Joe, you know a lot about that, I'm sure. But it's
probably not as much as I should.
The
but,
notices
yeah.
we've been sending out is that we see it as a penalty.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
and
that's what
on
I
appeal,
haven't had any.
it's gonna be interesting.
That's what I was going to chime in.
Joe
on.
hasn't
This
hit me
is
across the head yet with that, but yeah.
the ethical
didn't-
component. We,
Try to clarify some of that.
yeah.
Going back to the original price, and I've always thought, I never thought there was a problem, given the discount, but then the big problem is they want to penalize them for canceling, and that's what the rule, I think, was intended initially to stop, was penalizing the patient.
Right. So that required some changes in the contract with the patient, is what we saw.
One thing I would recommend you put it somewhere in another rule, but it should go, maybe you have, because I haven't seen that draft, is that if the doctor closes his clinic for any reason, it is his duty to go back to his prepayment plans and reimburse any unused portion. And that's in the close your clinic rule, but I'm not sure it's in the prepayment plan rule. So maybe an update would be appropriate, that they're supposed to always reimburse. But then the other question is if after a long period of time, how much do they have to reimburse?
Well, and that's the difference between like the membership plans versus prepaid plans, where membership plans have expiration dates on services where they disappear. So it's not like you're prepaying for services; it's access to services. There's this is one of those things where there's a lot of lawyers that develop these contracts, and we love you lawyers, we know, but this is why it's really difficult to make one rule that covers every possible iteration of this and be specific with it.
And that specific question actually about, well, okay, we had them on a plan, but then the plan expired. Do I still owe them for the services they never got? That's a question I actually get somewhat regularly.
And that's
and under the current 75.5, I don't really have a good answer.
Right, that was the problem with a lot of it. This is why Christopher and I have been working, or we spent a lot of time and we got to different drafts and we would pull them back. And it's the reason it hasn't been proposed yet is because this is just such a complex issue.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when a patient wants to cancel a plan that they signed up for, when they cancel it, do they feel like they've been fairly treated or do they feel like they've been cheated?
Exactly.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, clear communication. One of the big things I'm pushing for is to make sure that everything is spelled out in clear terms up front, and that then it becomes between a doctor and a patient to make agreements.
Keeping in mind that some people sign up for things they don't fully understand and appreciate at the time.
Okay, so on this item, I am not recommending we take action today. This is a good conversation and it gives good input from everybody, so I appreciate that. And we will hopefully have something a little clearer ready in the next few meetings.
I mirror Dr. Henry's recommendations and thank you for your service on as Rules Chair.
We have
let's see.
Scope rule.
Yeah. Okay. You need a quick break. If you need a quick break, we could taking a quick
5
break.
minutes?
Let's take 10 minutes. It's 11:55 a.m. and we'll shoot for reconvene at 12:05 p.m. The Texas Board of Chiropractic Examiners will now reconvene into open session. The time is 12:07 p.m. We are on agenda item number 17, which calls for discussion and possible action on proposing the repeal and replacement of a rule relating to scope of practice, 22 TAC 78.1, titled Scope of Practice. We'll hear from Joseph McLaughlin and Dr. Henry, and then we also have public comment request from Steve Tullius, and we'll give you a minute to express your thoughts as well. So, Dr. Henry, do you want to start on this, or Joseph?
Joseph actually has
Your,
done.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and
Alter Joe on this one.
So in your materials, you should have 17A and 17B. 17A is just a copy of the current rule in all its length and glory into a Word document. 17B is where I've made some basically just proposed cuts. I haven't even attempted to try and add anything to it at this point. Right, so I'm sure we're all aware that any proposal on this subject is, of course, going to generate a ton of public comment and feedback. So I just want to stress up front on the record, this is just a draft. This was some updates to 78.1 was something that Christopher actually wanted to do for a long time, and held off on that as this specific rule was the subject of a rule challenge lawsuit. And then even after the rule challenge, we looked into updating it, had a stakeholders meeting on it, and ultimately made the decision that we wanted to just maintain status quo for the time being. I think partly because there was another lawsuit somewhat implicating scope of practice that was still pending, the acupuncture lawsuit, and that's also been finally resolved. So, as of right now, of course, the board is not subject to any rule challenges or any active lawsuits. So, based on my conversations with Dr. Bronson and what I recall from our stakeholders meetings and previous board meetings where this came up, I think our primary goal is to just try and find a way to make this rule not quite so long and verbose and dense, and just try and find a way to make it more intelligible. So what I've done is just a first attempt at that. Let me toggle my view real quick. Okay, so starting in subsection A, I went ahead and just deleted some of these definitions that I felt like were either unnecessary because there's not any reference to them anywhere in our current rules, or that they were superfluous.
Defined elsewhere.
Defined elsewhere in rules or in Chapter 201 of our statute. I went ahead and removed the CPT codebook definition, cosmetic treatment definition. Actually, that definition, in a subsequent meeting, I want to actually recommend that we take that definition out of 78.1, but add it to 78.2, which is where we have an operative statement that says a licensee is prohibited from offering cosmetic treatments. I just think that should be in that rule instead of this rule, just my personal preference. Went ahead and removed the definition of incision. In my opinion, that horse, for lack of a better word, is sort of addressed in the Supreme Court's opinion from the Vaught lawsuit. And I think that's probably the best place to leave it. That opinion is law, right? And so it's defined in law by the Supreme Court. And I think that's the best definition to rely on. Finally, I removed the definition for on-site. That's defined in our delegation rule. And then I removed the definition of practice of chiropractic because, of course, that's defined in Chapter 201. I don't see any reason why we need to restate that here. So kind of along the same lines, the subsection B, if you move a little bit further down page 1, that literally just copies the language from Chapter 201. I can't really figure out why it was included in here in the first place, but it was. I don't see any reason to restate that. One of the things Christopher taught me about rule drafting is it's best to avoid superfluous language where you're just repeating definitions or language from a statute. Let the statute stand on its own and speak for itself rather. So then that moves us to the subsections. In the current version of the rule, it's subsections C, D, and E. These are what I like to call kind of the operative provisions of the scope of practice rule, and that this is where the rule really kind of expands on, okay, these are the things that chiropractors actually do. Here's how they can do them, and here's sort of it's where you're sort of marrying law and the science behind it, if that makes any sense. You're sort of taking actual medical terminology and sort of funneling it into the statutory definition of chiropractic that the legislature's handed down. Since I removed subsection B, in this draft, we would have to change them to subsections B for examination and evaluation, C for analysis, diagnosis, and other opinions, and then D for treatment, procedures, and services. The only actual change to any of these operative provisions that I made, and I'll kind of, sorry, I should have prefaced the agenda item 18 on proposing a new VAUNT rule is kind of goes in tandem with this. Christopher had said for a long time, and I agree with him, that the provisions on VAUNT need to just be moved into their own separate rule, that doesn't need to be in scope of practice. We have a separate rule for acupuncture, and those rules essentially establish additional credential requirements for performing those procedures. And so the idea is, well, we should just treat VAUNT the same way as we treat acupuncture. So when we get to agenda item 18, I'll go over that proposal, but you'll see there's substantively no difference between what's in the current language and that draft for a new rule. It's just taking it out, clarifying it, making it a little bit less wordy, and then just sticking it in its own separate rule. Other than that, I didn't really have any ideas on how I wanted to try and update any of these three operative subsections. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to Dr. Henry and the remaining board members, and also public comment, as I'm sure that's kind of where the majority of the conversation is going to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, the big thing that we had kept in mind at the beginning of this process was to have more of a rule that wasn't so exclusionary, that was just basically covering stuff that was already in statute. And Joe, you really summed it up. It's a lot of language cleanup. There may be some differences of opinion on if we should include some language from the ruling and definitions on incision, but overall, leaving that stuff out of the rule itself was kind of the goal, especially the stuff that's already written in statute. So statute tells us to go in and define things that need to be defined, but repeating it doesn't seem really necessary. And so that, even if we just do that, that's a great cleanup. So this is a great starting place, and we'd love feedback if you have it.
And just to add as well, importantly, with 75.5 and 78.1, those are our two oldest rules that have never been updated, not since I've worked for the agency. And we have that kind of 4-year running clock on statutorily reviewing all of our rules as part of the APA. And so both 75.5 and 78.1, of course, are quite a bit out of date at this point. So any repeal and replacement of those rules, even if you're not actually really substantively changing anything, does restart that clock. So like Dr. Henry said, even if we just propose what we have on here today without substantively changing it, and that were to be adopted, that would reset the clock on that. So essentially it's a start.
Yeah.
And but with that being said, I definitely think it's worthy of a lot more discussion, and we all know we'll get a lot of comment on it. So
the big thing to keep in mind is that this rule has gone through muster, so we want to be careful about adding a lot, but we want to make sure we don't remove anything that has significant value. And so this is where stakeholder feedback would be welcome. Looking at our current rule, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big thing, is we want to make sure that we're not trying to expand scope by any means. That's not something we're trying to do. We don't want to substantially change the rule that has already been through the process and has been taken to the highest level of courts. We do want to clean it up. And so that's kind of where I come from on my approach to this with Joe and the team. Correct?
Board members, are you ready for public comment? Okay. Steve Tullius, would you like to speak to us?
No comment.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Board members, any other questions or concerns for Joseph or Dr. Henry? Okay. So move forward with the agenda.
So we have On the agenda, agenda item 17 for 78.1 is listed as a possible action. So if you wanted to propose the language that I have in this draft today as a repeal and replacement of 78.1, you can do so. However, if anyone wants to take more time looking at this and offer comments, then we can wait to do that until the next meeting if we want.
Currently, I'd recommend that since we are talking about splitting out the Vaught rule, that we wait to take action on this item until we have a very clear draft that includes both to put together and well-reviewed, including public comment and input from you guys. And that will still go through a public comment period after that. I just would prefer to have something a little more polished before we put that out there.
We want this to be polished.
Yeah, this is a big one.
And I will add, if you want, we'll talk about the Vaught thing next, but if you wanted to propose that today, there's no reason that we couldn't have a 78.9 Vaught rule where there is duplicative language. Obviously, we don't like that long term from a, professional standpoint, but it wouldn't functionally change anything from a legal perspective. So, so just bear that in mind as well. If you decide you want to table it for further discussion and proposal at the next meeting, that wouldn't substantively prejudice us in any way.
Yeah.
We've already got Vaught is next.
Yeah, it's the next action.
Our next item right here.
Yep.
As long as we've got Vaught cleaned up.
Well, it's just separated out. It's as shall we move
There's nothing
past
contradictory in the second rule,
17?
right?
No, yeah.
If we're not going to take action on item number 17,
Yeah.
then we move forward with agenda item number 18, which calls for discussion and possible action on proposing a new rule relating to scope of practice and delegation. 22 TAC 78.9 would be titled Instrumented Vestibular Ocular Nystagmus Testing.
Joe, this is one that was before my time. I know that the original lawsuit way back when was based on this. And do we know or have we had stakeholder input on, is this still the standard test being performed? I mean, who's still doing this in the profession? How many docs are out there with a diplomate in neurology and 150 hours of Vaught-specific training?
I do not believe there was really a lot of substantive discussion on that at the stakeholder meeting that we had on scope of practice. I honestly couldn't. I'm not aware of any technical data on that at all. So this was just me, like I said, just taking that language and moving it to a separate rule, separate standalone. So in the Word document, in the materials, you can see there's I cited the current 78.1 language on Vaught. And I'll credit again to Christopher Burnett. They basically plagiarized his work here. But yeah, so the basic points are if a licensee wants to perform Vaught, they have to hold the current diplomate in chiropractic neurology, completed 150 hours of training, passed an examination for vestibular specialty or certification. And I don't know what that means, but it's in there. Of course, also, we did include the provisions on not allowing anyone to delegate Vaught, and that, we always have the operative provision on if you violate, you're subject to disciplinary action. So that's all that.
Based on our general approach to rules over the last few years of trying to eliminate as much of the inclusionary language, which would mean we'd have to go through and actually make a rule for every single thing that we can do, which I don't like, but I know that at a point in time, there was a reason why we had this particular thing listed, and is it still necessary?
Yeah, Dr. Henry, why are we doing a rule specifically for Vaught if we already won the case for Vaught?
I believe...
For me, it seems like we're opening a can of worms.
Well, the language already exists. It's really, do we still need it?
Yeah, so...
I think this goes back for me to when Christopher was talking about getting rid of the diagnosis rule as well. It kind of, to a lesser extent, but... if we already have the case law in our court, so to speak, because we won the case on it, do we really need a a rule specific to it, and then that opens up, then do we have to have a specific rule for everything that a
So,
chiropractor can do? It seems like
Currently,
it's gonna
this and acupuncture are one of the only two rules where we've specified what the additional training is.
I think acupuncture makes a little bit more sense to me because, you know, like on the report today,
Rate of
there's almost
utilization.
500 DCs that have a license in the state, but, you know, this is one that's a very, very niche thing, you know, so it,
I think Christopher's rationale for, you know, let's go ahead and put this out and have it standalone language is because the rule itself was the subject of the litigation and the rule challenge, or at least this language in 78.1. It was basically to just kind of enshrine it in our rules, for lack of a better word, you know, that the Supreme Court had said, okay, this is valid.
that's fine.
And so, yeah, the idea was, okay, we're going to have this here, we're going to keep it, but with the understanding that we would really try and stay away from proposing any more of these, oh, you need to do this, this, and this if you want to add this to your practice, because that's what created the rule challenge.
Yeah.
But since it's already been challenged and successfully defended, you know, we're essentially just moving, it's like moving papers around on your desk.
So based on that, you know, I think we do have this listed in the agenda as a possible action item. It sounds like council's advising us that it is okay for us to have rules with duplicate language as long as they're not contradictory there.
Right,
And
yeah.
so what we can do is go ahead and pass this, which then means as we do come up with that cleaner scope of practice rule, this is already somewhere else, or at least able to have been proposed, and we can get that passed and enshrined and just kind of done with. It's just that extra rule that just sits in our list.
I'm fine either way. I don't have strong feelings on it. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, and we're just proposing this to open up for public comment, which might generate some interesting feedback from the public. So it might be a great way to get the conversation going on the scope of practice rule as well.
Do we want? Go ahead, I interrupted you.
How many people do we have in the state of Texas that have a diplomate in neurology and are trained for Vaughn?
Our
I mean,
board
just out of curiosity.
doesn't award diplomates, so we don't have that accurate info as far as I know.
So that's not something that we actually have a click box
No.
that says, we know who you are.
Well, I've asked the question just among some in the profession, and it's a small number.
Well, there's a lot of
Currently,
neurology
it's a small
diplomates, I
number.
believe. I mean, but not necessarily ones that have 150 hours specifically in Vaunt training. And that's instrument-assisted Vaunt, isn't it? Like that, we need to be very careful about vestibular ocular nystagmus testing, because I think almost anyone who went to chiropractic school knows how to do that, the manual version. The instrument-assisted version is what this was all about. So anywhere we have Vaunt, we got to be really, really careful to include instrument-assisted. Because
Well, it's defined in A.
Well, but then we also in 2 come in and say 150 hours of training in Vaunt in general. So maybe that 150 hours doesn't have to be instrument assisted. But we got to be really cognitive of that, because just to differentially diagnose like benign postural vertigo syndrome, we're all using nystagmus testing.
Well, I do think that actually that's a good question. So in the current language, which again, the current language is the language that the Supreme Court blessed, so to speak. It says 150 hours of clinical and didactic training in the technical and professional components of the procedures as part of coursework in vestibular rehabilitation.
And that's a real functional neurology thing, where you're talking about using strips to work on frontal lobe. I mean, there's a lot of...
So, and that's kind of what I'm asking really specifically to the doctors on the board is like, substantively, does that long gobbledygook that I just read mean something different than just us saying has completed 150 hours of training in Vaunt?
You're saying
So,
that's what you're saying it's Vaunt, but that's not...
I'm just, sorry, thank you, Joe. I was just pointing to Dr. Henry that his concern over defining Vaunt in multiple places, I don't think is legally necessary. You correct me if I'm wrong, but it's defined in A, technological instrumented vestibular ocular nystagmus testing, in parentheses, Vaunt, and then Vaunt is...
So his question, though, was in A2, has completed 150 hours of training and it's just VONT.
Doesn't that refer back to the definition that
But we
gave
have to
in
be
A?
careful, because that's the standard medical definition for visual ocular nystagmus testing, which is very different than the instrument-assisted technological computerized version of that. Also a hugely different billing code. Well, I think we just changed the
Well,
abbreviation to IVONT.
I was actually just literally going to say that. Should it be TI Vaunt?
I think so, just to clarify the difference there.
Okay. Those are the words that the acronym is standing for.
Right, and if we use VAUNT, that is probably, I mean, VAUNT in general is not the same thing. So vestibular ocular nystagmus testing is simply checking when you rotate someone's head. If it bounces, you can do caloric with warm and cold water. I mean, you guys remember the Parker days over there when we were doing all these things. So it's very different than a very specific computerized test that you're talking about, which is what the lawsuit was about, because it was money, it was billing, it was being able to charge for that very high-end neurology test.
Okay, so what I have here updated then, and this is what we would be proposing, subsection A, a licensee may perform technological instrumented vestibular ocular nystagmus testing, parentheses, TI-VONT, TIVONT, close parentheses. And then in 2, has completed 150 hours of training in TIVONT.
I think we should keep the language of the didactic training and the technical and professional components of the procedures as part of coursework, because you're talking about, you just took an entire, there's no way you could do 150 hours in just IVONT. I mean, now 150-hour diplomate or a program that involves looking at that portion of it, it makes more sense. But so I would just really stick to the language that's already been there. If we're going to enshrine this rule, you can break it up, move it around, but let's keep that original language there, because that's basically saying you've done your functional neurology training.
Okay, so you would want it to read. I'm just going to copy and paste this real quick and then read it out loud. If y'all will bear with me. All right. This is pretty long, so just try and bear with me. I know we're getting close to the end of the meeting. Has completed 150 hours of clinical and didactic training and the technical and professional components of the procedures as part of coursework in vestibular rehabilitation, including the successful completion of a written and performance examination for vestibular specialty or certification. Okay, so that last part actually, that can be struck because number 3 just says has passed an exam for okay.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
that's part of coursework is fine. Or as part of rehabilitation, and just stop after rehabilitation.
Yeah, and where it's okay. So yeah.
Because 150 hours, you're talking about what to do about
All right.
positive sadness.
So just to be double super sure one more time, I'm sorry. Has completed 150 hours of clinical and didactic training in the technical and professional components of the procedures as part of coursework in vestibular rehabilitation.
I think that stays true to the original language that we're trying to enshrine here. So let's just follow that and try to keep it as close to those regulations that have been approved, and it'll just be there.
And then subsection B, a licensee may not delegate the performance of TIVONT. Keep that way. All right.
This is a non-substantive change.
Well, this hasn't been proposed yet at all, so this is us drafting it in real time.
But this does take the language from our existing rule, puts it in a separate rule, so now it's just not part of the scope of practice rule that we have to worry about.
And it's non-substantive.
Yeah, definitely.
Relative to the outcome of the Texas Supreme Court.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, just clarification.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
is my professional legal opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd go ahead and move that we propose this rule with the edits that we've just reviewed.
So the motion was made by Dr. Baucom and seconded by Dr. Neal.
Yes.
Any further discussion? No. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next heading on the agenda would allow the board to act on rules for adoption, but we have none for this meeting, so we'll move to the next item, which is agenda item number 19, allowing the board to meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.088, or 551.089, if related to the agenda items above as necessary. And since we don't have a reason to meet in closed session today, we'll move to the next topic, which takes us to the finish line. Agenda item number 20 allows board members an opportunity to request future agenda items. And so I already relayed that to you earlier, my recommendation of 78.3E, 79.5A, and occupations code about the language of chiropractor, licensee, or other person. Anybody else?
There was an item from our last meeting where we talked about a close for compliance amendment to Rule 80.2E. I just want to make sure that we still have that on the radar to bring up at our next meeting.
Yeah, so that was a rule that we had voted to propose at the last meeting, and I have not actually submitted that to the register. So
Okay.
that is my fault, but that will be submitted, and so then it'll be on your agenda for the next meeting as a rule to adopt.
Perfect.
Assuming that
everything.
don't have to make a big change to the proposal or something, but that's really low hanging fruit. So.
And then I know we were going to look into the registration of business entities. Do we have that as either a discussion item or if there is a rule proposal for our next agenda?
I'm going to need to probably dig on that a fair bit first. I think it's possible for us to do some rule language proposals, but if we dig into this and we start to feel like maybe we're not on the most solid ground, we might want to just have it be a discussion item, or potentially might want to ask for an AG's opinion or something like that as well.
Yeah, I think on our scope of practice rule, once we get that final one, I'd like to get the AG opinion on that as well, which will slow the process, but I think is worth the time.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Board members, Dr. Boyd Bush, our new ED, our General Counsel, Joseph McLaughlin, who worked very hard today, as always, entire agency staff, guests, thank you for being here. It was great teamwork. Agenda item 21 allows me to accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That was loud and clear.
I'm pretty sure that came from Dr. Baucom, and it was second. What?
Josh Holly.
Josh.
Mr. Josh Holla. Motion to adjourn, and it was seconded by Dr. Scott Wofford. The time is 12:35 a.m. on October 31st. p.m.
Oh, wow.
It's gone almost that long. 12:35 p.m., October 31st, 2024. Happy Halloween, everybody. We are adjourned.